from single-family homes to multi-family apartment style. I believe our population will double in the next 10 years. And if you drive on the North Perimeter, as Mr. Wharton has, or Minister Wharton, you will see the commercial boom. We have also been very successful in securing wastewater from the City of Winnipeg and water from the Cartier Co-op. So we know how regional cooperation works. We know how to work with partners. We know both the private sector and the community can be winners. In Manitoba, West St. Paul is a model for economic success. I believe the bill may be weighted in favor of private developers. We have had amazing experiences with private partners, including our private-public partnership that allowed the RM to bring in water from the Cartier Regional Water Co-op. This was a very positive experience where a private partner shared in the cost. However, we have also had negative experiences with developers that do not have the interest of the local community. Those are the developers that do not want to negotiate fair terms with the RM or pay their fair share for infrastructure. Those are the groups that will appeal to the municipal board. The appeal process is of concern for a number of reasons. Number one, a decision at the appeal level takes the decision-making out of the hands of the local politician. So a decision made by municipal council can be overturned. I am especially concerned over an appeal on a conditional use. Local elected officials will be holding the bag while the decision that can cause impact to the community is made by someone who does not live in the community and may know nothing about the community. There will be no accountability for their decision. So at the municipal board level, they will walk out of the door, leaving the council to deal with the public. So what I'm saying, if the municipal board makes a decision and the public isn't involved, that night they can leave and it's all over for them, and my council has to deal with the public. I think a good point the Mayor of West St. Paul brought up was if we have a hearing at our level, we could have upwards to 50 or 60 people speaking, and at the municipal board, nobody but the appealing party and the RM will be allowed to speak. Number two, the cost will be prohibitive for a small municipality. We will need to be prepared and hire legal counsel. Our administration staff is small. We have 9 administrative staff that include 3 managers. Resources have to be directed to an appeal. As a CAO, I will have to attend the board along with our planner. Our last 2 municipal boards were very lengthy. One was a simple challenge to electrical boundaries, and it was spread over 3 evenings. It should have taken a couple of hours. So we have found and historically for us that the municipal board has sucked resources that were needed elsewhere for the RM. I think the municipal board needs members that are familiar in municipal affairs and planning. And finally, appealing our development agreements would be devastating. We negotiate in good faith, keep the local community and the new development balanced. We've been very successful. We have negotiated approximately 40 development agreements in the last 5 years, and we have a lot of homes on the go. We're very successful. Backlog at the municipal board is high. I've heard tonight that we've had over 40% increase to funding. I believe the board has to put itself in position to do multiple hearings at the same time to keep up. At times, the board has been very backlogged, over 1,000 appeals. I speak from experience. I was once the director of the Board of Revision at the City of Winnipeg, seconded to successfully reduce a 25,000 appeal backlog. So I believe multiple hearings at multiple locations will have to take place to bring the current backlog down. The legislation would establish a regional planning authority in the Winnipeg metro region, create new rights of appeals on a wide range of local planning decisions, including expanding public appeals to the municipal board for rezoning applications in the City of Winnipeg, and would prescribe timelines for municipalities to process planning applications across the province. Plan 2050 will be a guiding force in the Winnipeg region. My concern here is with data that we're seeing coming out of Plan 2050 now, and I'll give you 3 examples about growth forecasts in the next 30 years. One example that stood out to me was this group has forecast no growth in Selkirk to 2050. Actually, the growth on a high-end forecast was an increase of 33 people, one person per year for Selkirk. Another neighbor of ours, East St. Paul, will have some decline between now and 2050, according to the plan. And in West St. Paul, the gurus of Plan 2050 have suggested that we will reach a number of 7,537 residents by 2050. By the end of 2021, we will be at 6,600 residents, and we have 3,000 units approved and ready to roll out. And what I mean by ready to roll out is they've been approved at the council level. Development agreements have been signed in short periods of time. And I currently have hundreds of units that basements are going in the ground, roads are being built. Just around the perimeter itself, I've had private partners put over $40 million into the ground infrastructure, including roads, hydro, drainage, water, and sewer. Thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight, and my support is certainly behind Bill 37 with some changes.
All right, thank you, Mr. Olenek, for your presentation. We'll go straight into questions. The Honourable Minister.
Hi there. I'll just address you by Brent, if you don't mind, just for the chance of potentially butchering your last name. So I hope you don't mind that. Just for a little bit of clarity, though, private citizens can present and participate at the municipal board. They have limited time, just like you do here today, but they do have that voice. The municipal board is scheduled to clear its backlog that we inherited by the next assessment cycle. Just from May of 2018 to December of 2020, we closed out 73% of the outstanding appeals. That's 1,790 appeals. So with the 42% increase in the municipal budget in this municipal board in this annual budget, we're hoping to obviously get that rate down to 0 by the next assessment cycle. So just if you can elaborate a little bit on the conditional use, you suggested that maybe this be amended in the bill. If you could just continue on that a little bit and discuss that a little bit more.
Mr. Olenek.
Yeah. Yes, the conditional use is where you'll find alterations to an application. So if someone's in a zoning area that they don't meet, they get to come to apply for a conditional use. For example, it may be a commercial highway where they want to do storage in the back lot behind the building, and they have the opportunity to come and apply for a conditional use. This is an example I'll use. So we could have a large number of the community, local level. The sign is posted, and local communities come out to talk about this conditional use. There's historic significance maybe in the community, in the area. And, I just have concerns on a conditional use that it will come to a board and they won't be able to take all the considerations into place. So when you have local councils, they're able to be on the ground floor with citizens and talk to them on a regular basis. They know the history of the community. And, at the municipal board, the last municipal board we had were, two of the members were from over 400 kilometers away from West St. Paul. So they had no local flavor for our community.
Further questions, Mr. Wiebe.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Olenek. It's really great to see you here at committee, and to see you, I think we're wearing a little bit more professional attire than maybe the last time we chatted, so it's good to see you here. I just wanted to thank you for your presentation here tonight, because I do think you have a very specific point of view and a lot of knowledge around this. As somebody, obviously we've heard from some elected officials, and you're certainly no stranger to that world as well, but coming from the CAO role, I think there's a lot to be said for your perspective, and take your concerns very seriously. I think there is room to improve this bill. The concern is that we're here at committee stage, after a year of ability to consult and to make changes. So hopefully the members of the committee are listening. Hopefully the minister is listening. And we certainly took some notes and appreciate your perspective. And I'm sure we'll be seeing each other again very soon, but appreciate you coming to the committee tonight.
Mr. Olenek, a response for Mr. Wiebe?
Thank you, Mr. Wiebe, and it's been my pleasure coming to committee tonight. And yes, I will see you in Grand Beach this summer, I'm sure.
Further question, Mr. Lamont, you have about 30 seconds.
Yeah, just a quick question. Often we talk about, when the point of view of the democratic input, if you've got people who are also property owners, do you have a ballpark when you talk about the development, the ballpark of the property that people own in West St. Paul that's been developed over the last few years?
Mr. Olenek?
What we have, our development, what we're trying to do with our development is we're an urban rural community, so we're trying to create some density in areas around the perimeter and around Main Street. So our future goals over the next 10 years, we'll see about I would say between 15 and 20% of our total community move into a development stage. And my concerns aren't necessarily all for West St. Paul, because I believe that we've set it up, and by doubling our population in the next 10 years, that we're going to be way more than halfway there to maybe what is a total build out for our community. So we've been a little bit ahead of the curve with working with private partners, with making successes happening in a win-win situation.
All right, I'm sorry, Mr. Olenek, but we're well over time, so I'm going to have to interrupt you there. We got to get to we got a number of presenters before us, and I do want to give them all a chance to speak. So thank you very much for your time this evening and for the presentation and the willingness to answer questions. Let's move to the next presenter, which is Kara Nichols, a planner. I'll now call on Kara Nichols and ask the moderator to invite them into the meeting, and I'd ask Kara Nichols if she could unmute herself and turn her video on. I think I see you there now. Hello, welcome to the committee meeting. You have up to 10 minutes to make your presentation. Go ahead.
Thank you. Good evening, members of the Legislative Standing Committee. My name is Kara Nichols, and I'm a municipal planner employed in Manitoba. Bill 37 is a positive step in the right direction from the original Bill 48. I understand that Bill 37 is based on best practices for land use appeals. However, other successful provinces have provided detailed grounds for an appeal within the bill itself, rather than through the regulation of legislation, which Manitoba plans to do. To create more clarity for planners, developers, and the province, the parameters around grounds for appeal should be provided within Bill 37. There should also be some details provided in the bill around imposed timelines. For example, what marks the beginning of a 90-day turnaround time for a development agreement? Most municipalities would have a different answer to this question. There is a provision in the Municipal Board Act to appoint a technical advisor. Including a planner on the municipal board as an advisor could be advantageous. Someone who has worked in the municipal sector, understands the building permit process, and who has experience writing development agreements could bring some valuable expertise to the municipal board. In conclusion, in order to proceed as a cohesive region that will attract global business, we should start the collaborative process at the legislative level. Bill 37 should be clear and provide detailed parameters to accelerate the process and prevent confusion. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Ms. Nichols, are there any questions on behalf of the members? The Honourable Minister.
Hi, Kara. Thank you for coming out tonight and putting your points of view on the record for Bill 37. And we will definitely take them into consideration, and we will talk to you soon, I guess. Have you? I'm just trying to think. I think we've met before. I'm trying to place you, so my apologies if I can't place you. But anyway, thank you for coming out tonight and presenting. That's it. Thanks.
Ms. Nichols, do you have any comment back to the Minister?
No, just thank you very much for listening tonight.
Mr. Wiebe, please.
Well, thank you very much, Ms. Nichols, for your time here this evening. I think it is important to hear your viewpoint. As I said before, I mean, this bill is somewhat unique in the sense that we often hear a bill which, you know, maybe favors one side or another, or has significant issues when it comes to one group over another. But what we're hearing this, I think, is important, and I do think your voice is one of those that we want to listen to. Just wondering, and maybe this will help jog the minister's memory. Have you made a formal request to meet with the minister? Have you written to the minister? Have you had any consultation whatsoever with the minister's office that maybe you could put on the record and give us a bit of context to the response and to the consultation that's taken place so far?
No, I haven't.
Well, Ms. Nichols, I just have to recognize you just for the purposes of a Hansard. So, Ms. Nichols?
No, I have not.
Are there any other questions from the committee? Mr. Minister?
Yes, a planner from East St. Paul. I have it now. I had to cheat and get my deputy minister's insight on that. So anyway, thank you for presenting. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Ms. Nichols. Seeing no other questions, we will move on with the next presenter. I will now call on John Mouseth, the Mayor of the RM of Headingley, and ask the moderator to invite them into the meeting. Please unmute yourself and turn your video on. Thank you very much.
Hello.
I can hear you, John. I just can't see you yet.
Might be a bit of a delay there, but I did hit the video.
We're just in a, don't worry, John, like I said, we can hear you. We're just in a bit of a holding pattern as we try to sort out the video.
Okay. Does that mean you'd like me to proceed, or do you want me to wait till you get the video?
If you can just give us a couple of seconds, John, and I will give you a heads up in warning.
Sure.
John, you don't have anything covering your camera, do you?
I do not. Everything shows working at my end. Just a second here.
Oh, John, geez, looking better than ever.
Thank you, Mr. Martin.
Well, all right. Anyway, John, I will ask you to please present. Thank you.
Okay. Good evening, Mr. Chair and committee members. My name is John Mossett. I'm the mayor of the RM of Headingley, and I'm representing our municipality here this evening. I want to thank you for the opportunity to present the concerns of our municipality regarding Bill 37. Just want to make a side note outside of my presentation is as I present, one of the reasons for I think the municipal common concern of anonymity or autonomy, is West St. Paul's presentation. They're a very successful municipality, widely respected, including by the municipality of Headingley. But we have two totally different mindsets, and so I'd like to start by providing a quick overview of our community. Headingley was created in 1992 following succession from the city of Winnipeg. It has grown from a population of 1,575 to 3,579, according to the last census. Our assessment has grown from $53 million in 1994 to $522 million in 2021. And today we have one of the lowest, if not the lowest, municipal mill rates in the province at 6.4 mills. Our growth has been steady thanks to the vision of our municipal councils and our residents. Our planning process has resulted in controlled growth in all sectors. All of our significant planning decisions have been made in consultation with our community, and at each election, one of the main issues is development control and the vision for our community, and our community is very engaged. Bill 37 will lead to the adoption and implementation of the Focus 2050 regional plan. Planning control will be effectively lost at the community level. which may result in significant change to the vision for our community. Our vision of a density of 1 to 2 lots per gross acre and controlled development will be replaced with the vision of the new capital region of a density in the order of 9 lots per gross acre and with very limited control over the pace of development. The Bill 37 changes are significant, with a massive shift in the loss of local decision-making and control. The changes proposed come at a time when COVID-19 and the health and welfare of all citizens are at risk and foremost in people's minds. There is an obligation on the provincial government to carry out proper consultation, failing in which the result will be people believing that they have been taken advantage of by the provincial government at such a critical time. Members of our council have spoken with local ratepayers who are for the most part unaware of the changes being proposed. Once informed about their impact, their reaction is strongly against, and the feedback has been that the lack of consultation by the provincial government appears deliberate to avoid public scrutiny and take advantage of the pandemic crisis. In regards to loss of autonomy, the changes will mean that most local decisions made concerning development plans, zoning bylaws, conditional uses, and even conditions of development agreements may now be made by the municipal board on appeal by the developer or property owner. As a result, council decisions following public input are now in effect meaningless, with the decisions to be made by an unelected municipal board who are appointed by the provincial government. How can the municipal board know about and understand the local circumstances and conditions for every Manitoba municipality? Further, why is there no provision for appeals by objectors, or at minimum a provision or for inclusion of objectors in the municipal board appeal process? For the 18 municipalities making up the capital region, local land use planning decisions will also now be dictated by the overarching regional plan, Focus 2050, being prepared right now before Bill 37 is even law. The regional plan mandates that its policies and rules must be implemented and followed by all 18 member municipalities, with no development permitted that is inconsistent with it, including even development permits. The only way to have the regional plan changed is at the regional planning board, where decisions are made by the 18 municipalities, not by council or the planning board members who are accountable to the community impacted by the decision. Do not underestimate the impact of the land use decisions being made by the municipal board that are not supported by the local council or community. The board's decisions will be seen as the provincial government's responsibility and interference with local decision making. Bill 37 will impose of having to participate in and defend its decisions on appeal. Who's going to pay for these increased costs? Will it be the rest of the municipalities, property owners, and taxpayers, or will it be all land use developers and higher fees and levies? Also, with the expected huge increase in appeal hearings and work for the municipality board, who will pay for the board's increased costs? The taxpayers of Manitoba as a whole? In conclusion, Bill 37 will result in a huge change to the planning process in Manitoba. Local autonomy will be lost, and despite its intent, red tape and costs will be significantly increased. These changes are being made with limited consultation with the people affected by it most. The working group advising the government on the legislative changes contained no elected municipal officials or planning practitioners from the regulatory side of the planning process. We are particularly concerned about the lack of any consultation whatsoever with our community. A community with a proven track record of success in the delivery of planning services that meets the community vision and is delivered in a timely fashion. Why wasn't there an interest in looking at a process that is successful? Finally, our ask is that you pause this important process to ensure that all aspects of the legislation are considered and reviewed by a broader cross-section of representatives. I want to thank you for your time this evening.
Thank you very much for your presentations. Do members of the committee have questions for the presenter? The Honourable.
Want to once again thank you for coming in, and our local councils, our grassroots politicians, and I just want to thank you for bringing your voice forward tonight. Thanks.
Mayor Mouseth, if you'd like to respond.
No, I want to thank you as well for taking the time to hear our case tonight. Thank you.
Mr. Wiebe has a question for you.
Well, thank you very much, Mayor Mouseth, for coming here this evening. It's important to hear your voice, and I appreciate your unique perspective that you bring on behalf of your ratepayers. What I'm hearing from you is, you have a specific vision for your town and for your development. It sounds like you've been pretty successful at doing what you do, and you have the support of your electorate to do that. And what I'm hearing is that you feel like this is, being imposed on you, and that most important piece of consultation hasn't happened. So I take those comments very seriously. I also appreciate you noting the fact that, under, COVID and all the additional pressures that municipalities are feeling these days, that a change that's as significant as this really doesn't help to spur development at a time when I think municipalities are looking for all the assistance they can get. So, I don't think I have a question, but I just wanted to thank you for your perspective. Like I said, I think it's an important piece of the puzzle in trying to understand how this is going to impact each municipality in the region individually, and I think your perspective is very unique, so it was good to hear that. Thank you.
Mr. Mosseth, I'm not sure if you would like to respond to Mr. Wiebe at all?
Sure, really quickly. I just want to say that, as I think Mayor Bowman alluded to earlier, we are in support of better regional planning. But, we are elected by our residents, and, we need to make sure that their concerns and the vision of our community is met. And Bill 37 does threaten that as it stands.
Mr. Lamont has a question.
Yes, thank you very much. Look, I wanted to say thank you too, because I think you've done a fantastic job of articulating many of the issues, the very serious issues with this bill, both in the way it treads on autonomy, adds, and doesn't really do what it sets out to do. I guess, and my family actually grew up in Headingley, though don't, anyway, but near where Taylor Farm is, but I even did some surveying. But I'm just wondering if you've had a chance, is this, obviously this is a broader concern. Is this something you've been able to discuss with residents, and is there an interest in, a further interest in pausing this bill? Because I think that recommendation is probably one of the best I've heard.
Mr. Mouseth?
Yes, I think that is our ask. I think there is need for a consultation with elected officials, planners, and this is. I think Mayor Bowman alluded to it. This is a huge deal. This is a huge bill, and I think, given the importance of it, I think it's. I think we need to get it right the first time. Thank you.
Are there any other questions from the committee members? All right, seeing none, just on a private note, John, I just want to say hello, and it's nice seeing you virtually, and when rules apply, please be assured that I'll be out there for an after-council bevy like old times. So I hope all is well. Thank you.
Fantastic.
I will now call on Michael Carruthers and ask the moderator to invite them into the meeting. Please unmute yourself and turn your video on. Mr. Carruthers?
Hello.
If you can please proceed with your presentation. Thank you very much.
Hi, thank you very much. My name is Michael Carruthers. I work in land development with Ladco Company Limited. I'm also on the board of directors for the Manitoba Home Builders Association and UDI Manitoba. Thank you very much for the opportunity to present here today and for the ongoing public and industry engagement on this bill, as well as with the capital region planning work being undertaken by the Winnipeg Metro region. There are a number of good, positive, aspirational aspects of this legislation: regional planning, regional servicing, cooperation, streamlined development approval timelines, an appeal process for both public and developers. The objective of enhancing economic opportunities and ensuring the capital region and Manitoba remain competitive is a critical importance for the future of our province. I do have a couple of comments and concerns with the legislation that I would like to bring forward. Items that could become unintended consequences if not adequately addressed. First being service standards. I support the idea, the concept, and the intent of consistent development approval timelines. Timelines need to be clear, understandable, and achievable. My concerns are not with the timelines, my concerns are with the timelines that are not being dealt with this legislation, what I would refer to as pre-application and post-approval timelines. Unfortunately, there could be added times and costs to applicants. Municipalities may end up front-loading application processes and require more information that could result in added time, costs, and uncertainty before an application is even accepted. These could include things like prolonged pre-application processes, extended consultations, added traffic studies, added engineering studies, and detailed design, project designs. This would result in proponents having to front-end these without even knowing if their application would be considered, let alone approved. Many worthy development projects won't even proceed to the application stage. There needs to be a very clear understanding of what constitutes a complete application. A second timeline that is not being dealt with this legislation are what I refer to as post-approval timelines. These timelines are often longer than the approval process itself. These include the preparation of legal and servicing agreements, review and approval of servicing designs and plans, the review of and registration of legal plans at the Land Titles Office. These types of timelines can be extensive. There will be expectations from many in the community that the development processes have been streamlined, only to find out that one piece of the process has been dealt with, while another piece and other pieces of the process remain the same. For instance, we are working on a development project in North Winnipeg. We started this process 6 years ago. We're now at the point where we're servicing the site, plans are being registered, and hopefully by the end of 2021, homes will be constructed. I am not certain how this legislation would shorten these timelines. The second item that I'd like to briefly talk about are opportunities for municipalities to require development agreements on permits. You have heard from others here this evening, and you'll likely hear more as we carry on this evening. I'm not really sure what the issue is that this portion of the legislation is trying to resolve. In reality, the unintended consequence is that certain property rights may be taken away. Property owners should be assured that their rights, that the rights granted under existing bylaws, such as zoning bylaws, are respected. With this legislation, there certainly may be some of these rights may certainly be diminished. Every permit application could be questioned, could be subject to administrative review. There are potential added costs of servicing or outright rejection, even though the use would be permitted under the existing bylaws. Discussions that we have had with the City of Winnipeg and their staff would seem to suggest that the city would like to have a tool to implement local area planning and pre-zoning, principally in infill areas. The city would be able to plan, service, and pre-zone a redevelopment district and have a mechanism to collect funds to cost share infrastructure improvements to service the redevelopment area. This makes sense, and I expect that it would garner broad support. However, that's not what the legislation contemplates. It seems to be too far open-ended and possibly open to abuse. I would strongly recommend removing this portion of the legislation and work with the municipalities and the industry to come up with a workable solution. Alternatively, if that's not possible, then I would recommend that proclamation be delayed until this has been studied further and the inconsistencies, uncertainties, and the kinks are all addressed by an amendment. Thank you very much for your time. That would conclude my presentation, and look forward to any questions.
Thank you very much for your presentation. We'll roll right into questions. The Honourable Minister.
Yes, thank you very much for your presentation. I would like to maybe get you to expand a little bit on the pre-application and the post-approval. Bill 37 is a great foundation that we can build upon, and it kind of sounds like there's more work to do. but maybe you could elaborate on those 2 points, please, if you wouldn't mind.
Mr. Carruthers.
Sure thing. The pre-application, what I refer to here is prior to a municipality, in particular the city of Winnipeg, accepting an application. The timeline for the approvals starts when the application is accepted. We are concerned that the city may increase upfront requirements for an application before they will get money, and we will be going into land titles for plan registration later this month or early May. So it's been well over a year. Now, granted, these projects that we're working on are sizable, significant projects dealing with hundreds of acres, not small projects, but regardless, those are the types of processes and timelines that are not addressed in this legislation and are critical to developers.
All right, further questions from the committee, Mr. Wiebe.
Mr. Carruthers, thank you very much for your time this evening. Once again, I think you brought an important perspective here and given us all something to think about. You know, again, I'm concerned that, you know, it sounds like there's a lot yet to be figured out with this bill that could really hamper or impede the industry from, you know, from doing the work that it needs to do, especially as we're trying to you know, grow coming out of COVID and recover our economy. It sounds like there's some real concerns. My question for you is on what you're calling the post-approval timelines. Do you believe that within the bill as it stands right now, because as I said, there's a lot that is being left to regulation. There's a lot that still needs to be hammered out. Do you believe that within the structure of the bill as it stands now, that there's a potential for your concerns to be addressed?
Mr. Carruthers.
The post-application or post-approval process would be very, I think through legislation would be very difficult to amend and to actually shorten that timeline. It needs to have cooperation and collaboration from all levels of government, from utility providers, from the land titles offices. It's more of a need for an active involvement from all parties and pursuing a common interest and getting projects approved and in the ground as quick as possible. So that is one that I'm not exactly certain how legislation could address, but legislation could address, or certainly regulation could address what the application requirements are, and would certainly go forward or go a long ways of starting the process for when approvals would commence.
All right, thank you. I think that's about all the time we have for questions. Mr. Carruthers, I thank you for your time and for your presentation this evening and for being willing to answer questions from members of the committee. We'll go into the next presenter, and I'll call on Alan Borger and ask the moderator to invite Mr. Borger into the meeting. And Alan Borger, I'll ask that you unmute yourself and turn your video on. All right, I think I can see you now. Mr. Borger, welcome to this committee meeting. You have up to 10 minutes to make your presentation. Go ahead.
Good evening, Mr. Minister, members of the legislature and the legislative committee, and other distinguished guests. There's certainly a lot of them here tuning in tonight. My name is Alan Borger, president of LADCO. As most of you know, we are a diversified family business that's been active for over a century. As well, over the past 70 years, LADCO has been a pioneer in the land development business, having master planned about 14 large and small communities, about 5,000 acres in Winnipeg, home to 21,000 families, and obviously a great deal of non-residential real estate. I'd like to start by commending the government for bringing forward Bills 48 and 49 and then Bill 37. I think the legislation is timely and critically important. I'd also like to thank the minister for inviting me to serve on the working group, which brought together a diverse group of knowledgeable folks with a wealth of practical experience. I expect some of our recommendations will find their way into the proposed legislation, or at least perhaps the regulations. As I see it, the legislation can be broken down into three parts: governance, development agreements for development permits, and regional planning. First, governance. Bill 37 will create a more equitable and transparent system complete with appeals. Frankly, over the many years, our company has been blessed. We have great staff. We've been able to work with the different politicians and professionals in the different administrations and ultimately to get things done. But we've certainly had our fair share of hair-raising experiences, some that cannot in any way be defended as due diligence or legitimate responses to bad proposals or bad developments. It would have been nice in these circumstances to know that there was some sort of remedy for at least some sort of review. So I think it's overdue, but it will be important to support the system with adequate resources. Second, development agreements for development permits. I think the other guys have canvassed this. I think these provisions ought to be deleted, at least until we can be confident that they will not apply to proposed developments that are consistent with existing zoning. Finally, regional planning. The most important piece of the puzzle, I think. Timely and critically important because we are again reaching an inflection point similar to where we were back in 2001. Again, we must decide. We have enough economically serviceable ground in Winnipeg for about 8 to 10 years. After that, it will run out and it will become very expensive to bring some of the other land on stream. As well, I understand that some of the municipalities are in the same boat, facing the same types of issues with some of their infrastructure. So we can either have a regional plan that drives logical, efficient, cost-effective, and competitive real estate that considers and in fact optimizes the use of the existing and planned infrastructure, or we can leave things exactly the way they are with reasonable densities, but scarcity and high costs in Winnipeg, and with some pretty inefficient exurban sprawl in certain parts of the capital region. If we make that choice, we will drive up the cost of housing and the cost of doing business in the province. I've worked on this file for about 30 years now. Exactly 20 years ago, back in 2001, I warned the government of the day that the recession in our industry was finally ending after 10 long years, that the market was changing, that we would be out of land in 3 to 5 years, and that the results would be catastrophic. In fact, we did run out of land in 2007 in the south half of the city. But fortunately, the government recognized the problem, collaborated with the city industry and other stakeholders, and brought on the MHRC's land. As a result, by 2008, Waverley West, Sage Creek, and Kildonan Green were all on stream, and those developments were followed by Meadows West and Frapont, also known as Bonavista today, which solved the problem for about 25 years. I bring this up to show that we've been here before, that these issues are very important, and that the solutions must transcend politics. Back in 2001, we were able to move quickly to bring on more land, to capture the population, business, assessment, GDP, and tax revenues that would have otherwise been lost. But this time, it will not be so easy. This time, all of the capital region must participate. Everyone's going to have to pull together to find the most creative solutions. And while it's going to be quite challenging, there are a number of good tools for you to consider. For example, I often look to the old version of Plan Winnipeg for guidance. That document set out the criteria that helped determine what, where, when, how, and why development should occur. Everything but who, because the decisions should be based on facts and principles. Basically, 6 factors or criteria. First, you need a long-term predictable supply for a balanced market. The planners usually want 20 or 30 years. Second, how much demand will there be? I'm not taking anything for granted, but if the planners, politicians, developers, and market all do their job, then the goal should certainly be 1 million people. Third, follow the pipe. Make the best use of the infrastructure. Fourth, pursue contiguous, not leapfrog development. Fifth, build the highest density that the market will support, because all things being equal, it's the most efficient. Now, just to pause, some folks think they can ignore the market and simply tell people where and how to live. Well, go ahead and try some of that with your own money. It won't work. People and industry will move. And last, geographical, social, and cultural issues must play a role. Interestingly, one of the best tools, one that takes into consideration all of the different factors, at least to an extent, is the cost-benefit study, like the reports that were prepared by LADCO and the MHRC for Waverley West. These reports, these studies work because they identify the municipal infrastructure and how much it will cost, and they consider the market, what the development will be worth to the municipality. Some examples. There hasn't been any number talk yet, so I'm going to take a second here. The studies for Waverley West determined a net present value of $250 million or $92,000 per developable acre. More recently, a study we did for 700 acres just south of the city's snow dump concluded that the development would be worth $120 million or $165,000 per acre to the city. So the stakes are really high, and this can make a big difference, especially for government finance. These are big numbers, and the decisions we make in the next couple of years will be more or less permanent. Every time we make a good or bad decision, it affects the competitive position of the entire capital region. And every incremental dollar that can be created that flows to a municipality because they've made the right decision, well, that's one less dollar that doesn't have to be taken through some form of taxation and then transferred to the municipality to help with, say, infrastructure. To be clear, I'm not advocating a financial analysis for every square inch, but we should keep the principles in mind when we're settling a capital region plan. In general, start with the infrastructure, water, wastewater, pipes, and pavements primarily. Then plan for some density, usually dwellings per gross acre. Finally, ask yourself, will it sell? It makes absolutely no sense to create zoning that will probably not be used. But if the densities are too low, then it's really only good for large lot upper end housing. An interesting niche, to be sure, but not where most of the market lives. If the densities are too low, then we will sterilize wide swaths of ground that would otherwise be developed, development that would otherwise provide a win-win for pretty much everyone.
Mr. Porger, you've got about 30 seconds.
So what's the next step? Please listen to the municipalities, working group, and others that have suggested changes. Then make up your mind. Make any amendments you think are required. Pass the legislation, but the devil will be in the details. With respect to the regional plan, you must create an organizational structure that can be trusted to consider all of the evidence and make the best decisions for the capital region. The directors must look to the best interests of the capital region, and they cannot be scared of NIMBY. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Borger, for your presentation. We'll roll right into questions. The Honourable Minister.
Oh, I can't hear. What's going on?
Mr. Borger, are you able to hear the minister?
I can hear you.
I can't hear him either.
All right, can we try the honorable minister one more time?
Testing,
Microphone not working?
testing.
Okay, go ahead. Go ahead, minister.
Okay, I think you should be able to hear me now. Perfect, good. Okay, so thank you for coming in again, Mr. Borger. Nice to meet you once again, even though it's virtually here today. I'd like to thank you for all the input you've done for the growth of Manitoba over the past, well, I won't hazard a guess of how many decades, but quite a few, I'm guessing, and your family and all the input that they've done over generations, I guess. You mentioned 8 to 10 years we're going to hit a wall. I was hoping you could maybe elaborate on that in your answer, and also maybe do some suggestions for density, and explain a little bit more about follow the pipe. I understand where you're going with that, but maybe on those 3 points, if you could just expand on those for committee here, I think it'd be helpful.
Mr. Borger.
Well, thank you. Sure. We're going to finish off the land that we're on now. It's no surprise that we're doing that. We've all been following the pipe, developers and the city. And so we're doing the land that's easiest, the low-hanging fruit. But in 8 to 10 years, in order to pursue development, the net present values will be lower, most assuredly, because there will be greater cost one way or another. In terms of the numbers, historically, Winnipeg densities were about 4 units per gross acre. That grew to about 5 after the 1990s. And maybe some of the planners will quibble with me, but I think it sits around 8 or 9 now, depending on the area, including single family, duplexes, row housing, condos, and multifamily. That should be the goal. That's where these dramatic net present values come from. That's where you're getting the biggest bang for the buck. And if we diverge from that, then, well, let's do it with our eyes wide open, knowing that we are destroying value and ultimately compromising competitiveness and living standards. Because for me, affordable housing and low costs of doing business is a competitive advantage that Manitoba must never give away.
Other questions for Mr. Borger? Mr. Wiebe.
Very much, Mr. Borger, for your presentation here this evening. I think you've certainly given us something to think about. I appreciate the work that you do as helping to spur development. This is something that as an opposition, we've tried to be as clear as possible. We're obviously in favor of development when it makes sense, when all the parties are at the table and willing to and able to take part. Just earlier, well, I guess late last year, but earlier in this session, we passed the Keystone Development Zone in Brandon, trying to bring together some municipalities there to make sure that development moves forward. And as you mentioned, of course, Waverly West and many other communities brought on stream by an NDP government. So I think there's a lot that we have in common with regards to that. Now, you've said you've been part of the committee that's worked on this with the minister. We've heard quite a number of concerns, both from developers and from elected officials and organizations that represent those elected officials. Can you comment on any of the concerns that you've heard here today? Were those concerns that you heard throughout the process? And is there anything that you're looking to change with regards to this legislation?
Mr. Borger, a response if you may, but only about 30 seconds. Thanks.
I think for sure that the legislation can be improved, but it's an awfully good start for us as a province to be looking at this, because you won't have the same time that we had when I went to see Minister Sale and said, look, this is going to happen. and he agreed with me, and he and Glenn Murray moved heaven and earth to do it. But this time it won't be so easy. We don't have the luxury of time. We have to get going. And so in that regard, it may not be perfect, but I honestly think we should try and move forward with this.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Borgia, for your presentation and for taking the time to be with us this evening and answering some questions from the members of the committee. We're going to go to the next presenter, and I'll call on Brad Erb from the RMF McDonald and ask the moderator to invite them into the meeting. And Brad Erb, I would ask that you unmute yourself and turn your video on. All right, Brad Erb, I can see you now. You can start with your presentation. You have up to 10 minutes. Go ahead.
Thank you. As you mentioned, I'm Brad Erb, Reeve of the RMF McDonald. I'm also an executive member of the Winnipeg Metro region, but I want to make it clear that I'm representing the municipality today and not anyone from the Winnipeg Metro region itself. So thank you for allowing me some time to share my thoughts and concerns related to Bill 37. I'd like to talk specifically to two areas of the bill. First is related to the appeal process as it pertains to conditional uses and development agreements. And secondly, there is the establishment of the capital planning region and the development of a regional plan. First off, related to the appeal process, I think my concerns have been articulated by a number of people, and particularly by the first presenter, and we stand behind AMM's position on the appeal process. So, Cam articulated that, but in a more specific sense, my concerns relate to the written rationale for rejection of a conditional use application. Each council member may have a differing view as to why they may have rejected an application based on their interpretation of the application measured against current land use zoning. As well, one of the fears that we have in McDonald's is that it may lead to ineffective use of finite municipal resources. As an example, having some form of high-end water users as a conditional use within a certain zone may be reasonable, but not unlimited. Is there still flexibility built into the plan to make reasonable land use decisions based on best use of the infrastructure? With regards to appeals related to development agreements, sections 151, any terms and conditions included in the development agreement can be appealed to the municipal board, as well as if a developer applies to amend a development agreement and council refuses to amend the existing development agreement, that can be appealed. There may be situations when a council, as part of good faith in negotiations, agrees to a clause in the development agreement because other wording was obtained, give and take, so to speak. Can the developer now appeal an agreement both parties have signed off on in good faith? We believe we have demonstrated good faith negotiation with our development partners in a timely manner, and fear that this provision may lead to longer, less collaborative negotiations with the threat of appeal lingering. I'm hopeful that there's language around this issue that promotes good faith from all parties. Secondly, I would like to present my comments related to the establishment of a capital planning region and development of a regional plan. As I mentioned in my introduction, I'm not only an elected official in the RMF McDonald, but I've had the great pleasure of being a Reeve for 8 years, and before that I've served 12 years on council. So I'm also an executive member of the Winnipeg Metro region and been actively involved and served on the executive for the last 8 years. Serving as an executive member continues a legacy for our community. McDonald's former Reeve of more than 20 years, and a person I have much respect for, Rodney Burns, was a founding member of the 1998 Mayors and Reeves of the Capital Region, the precursor to today's Winnipeg Metro region. Along with Winnipeg Mayor Susan Thompson and other leaders of the day, these champions of collaboration and partnership put forward a vision of a strong, coordinated, and prosperous Metro for all. They worked tirelessly, and when I was afforded the opportunity 8 years ago to join the organization, I saw it as a continuing path to formalize collaboration and cooperation and develop a plan for our growing Metro region. McDonald is one of the fastest growing municipalities in the province. Greater than 14% population growth in the last census from 2011 to 2016. We had the second largest assessment amongst all rural municipalities in the province. and we're third lowest mill rate, in my understanding, third lowest mill rate in the province as well, rated charged to our ratepayers. I mention this because the question could be asked, why collaborate? Why think regionally? We are in an enviable position in McDonald by most standards. But I believe, and our council believes, the whole can be greater than the sum of its parts. We know that successful regions coordinate their land use, plan for infrastructure investment and services to increase quality of life, protect our environment, and drive our economic competitiveness. Long-term regional planning and collaboration is nothing new. We see this type of planning all across North America. In fact, the Winnipeg Metro region is one of the last jurisdictions in Canada to develop and formalize a regional plan. What we are doing in this draft plan is really moving us to the modern era. Our current journey toward a regional plan, or draft plan 2050, started in 2015 when we engaged economist Jeremy High and top site selector Greg Waspendorf to provide some insight on a way forward. These experts told us that the way we plan and invest now is expensive, fragmented, and will leave our region uncompetitive and a disadvantage. They also said we were missing current economic opportunities that surrounding regions who have done the hard work of organizing themselves are currently benefiting from. In 2019, Dr. Bob Murray reaffirmed High's and Waspendorf's findings in his report, and I think we all are familiar with it, for the benefit of all. He stated organizing our land use and servicing was the first step to getting our economic house in order. Coming out of COVID, there has never been a more pressing time to get our economic house in order. High's and Waspendorf's recommendations have not diminished in importance, but in fact have increased. With no shared vision and no formal mechanism to cooperate from, municipalities continue to plan in isolation from each other, fail to compete with other organized regions for economic development opportunities, contrary to what is recommended by experts. And this is expensive, has led to duplication and fragmentation. In our region today, we have 106 economic development plans and strategies, 57 fire halls, 28 waste disposal sites, 92 different land use designations, and 169 recreation facilities, many in dire need of expensive upgrades. I'm sure it's not a surprise to anyone here that many of our roads, bridges, water, and wastewater infrastructure require significant investment. Investments that we can. Board members, we've been active participants in this process since 2019, and we're amongst the hundreds of stakeholders that have been heard from in countless hours of developing and engaging to develop this plan. There are still opportunities, I believe, to provide input at 2050.ca. What we've learned thus far in a high level sense, we've learned that by 2050, we will grow to 1.1 million people. That we are forecast to need 140,000 jobs. Our region has an aging population that require planning, investment, and foresight. Metrics like these demonstrate clearly why having a shared long-term plan is so important. Plan 2050 is a balanced, leading-edge starting place that I believe will be foundational to kickstart our economy and put Manitoba on the economic development map. In closing, we need to coordinate our infrastructure and services regionally. We need to collaborate to compete on a global stage. We need to adopt Draft Plan 2050 as a blueprint to develop a collaborative coordinated region. And we need funding from the province to organize and engage and do the necessary work to get this planning complete. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Mr. Erb, for your presentation. We'll roll right into questions to the Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Erb, and if I understood you correctly, thank you for your 20 years of service for representing the front line. You're the grassroots of our politicians, as I mentioned earlier. So thank you for your service. And it also goes to show the connection that you have with your community. I also appreciate you guys having the third lowest mill rate in Manitoba. It goes to show your fiscal responsibility. If you could elaborate a little bit on the conditional use, you suggested that it be amended or taken out of there. Can you just elaborate a little bit more on that and your concerns with it and how your suggestions for moving forward?
Mr. Erb.
Yes, there were two particular things there. I think one was highlighted earlier was if it's not a unanimous decision of council, how do we articulate what is the best way, or how can it be articulated how the reasons for opposition were to conditional use. So that's one. The other one, and it's just something that we twig on is, and I highlighted it, is if we have scarce resources, and I speak particularly to in the Arm of McDonald along McGillivray, we have constraints related to water use at this particular time without significant capital investment in infrastructure related to water production and the whole bit. So the concern would be having conditional use and setting precedent for conditional use and using potentially all of our capacity in a regional or our municipal water system that is maybe not best use of infrastructure. So maybe one hotel could go there, but we don't need a series of them because we just don't have the infrastructure to support that. So that is kind of our thoughts related to that.
Further questions, Mr. Weeb?
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Erb, for your presentation here this evening. I think the perspective of the RM of McDonald's is important in this conversation because you are so closely tied to the larger metro region, and I appreciate that you wear that hat as well, and that you sit on that on the executive of the Winnipeg metro region, and that you've been a proponent of it. And I guess this is where I'm having a bit of a hard time understanding. You know, it sounds like you're a proponent of further integration and working towards that plan, and yet, you know, you come here and I understand there's a separation between the hats that you wear, but you know, I hear concerns about the appeal process that you echo the concerns of the AMM. Can you help me understand this? You know, is this a concern that's shared by other members of the executive of the Winnipeg Metro region? Is this something you've heard from other folks in that universe as well? And you know, and what do you suggest if we've got this bill that obviously isn't meeting some of those concerns? Where to go next?
Mr. Erb.
Well, thank you. My comment would be, I think those from the executive or the rest of the Winnipeg Metro region have had the opportunity here to probably present and articulate their positions. We have never really formally at the Winnipeg Metro region had a position as it relates to the appeals and Bill 37. We've been more focused on because the regional plan itself. Part of my view on the regional plan is the concept of autonomy. Of course, we all want to continue autonomy. I'm no different in my municipality, but I believe there are tools within a regional plan that will allow for that, and I think that that balance can be found.
Okay, any further questions? All right. Not seeing any further questions, so Mr. Erb, I want to thank you for your time this evening and for answering the questions from committee and making your presentation. We're going to roll right into the next presentation. We've already heard from Ivan Normando, so I will call on Paul Bell and ask the moderator to invite them into the meeting. Paul Bell, I'd ask that you unmute yourself and turn your video on. All right, I think I can see you there now. Welcome to the committee meeting this evening. You are free to go ahead and make your presentation with up to 10 minutes.
Thank you. Hello and good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to come and speak to the Standing Committee this evening. My name is Paul Bell and I am a registered professional planner with the Manitoba Professional Planning Institute and a member of the Canadian Institute of Planners. I am here tonight as a private resident of Winnipeg, though I am a practicing planner primarily in rural Manitoba. So most of my speaking points tonight will be geared towards the Provincial Manitoba Planning Act and the amendments there for that act. And I am here to speak in opposition to the proposed Bill 37. While there are certainly many welcome aspects of it, I'm going to focus on two separate issues relating to the proposed changes. First, revolving appeals that are being sent to the Municipal Board, and as well as an aspect that I find is missing from the proposed changes, and that is combined site development applications. Bill 37 will be broadening the range of applications that can be appealed to the Municipal Board, as well as the types of appeals that can be filed, such as instances where an application has not been brought forward within a specific time frame. If an application is appealed to the Manitoba Municipal Board, The board has the full authority to choose to approve or reject an application, right then and there. This means that there are decisions being made potentially without the input of local elected officials, but also without local residents having an opportunity to provide input or even be notified. In planning, local knowledge is a vital part of the decision-making process. And it's how we determine what is in the public interest, that complicated and often messy synthesis of public opinion, public good, and public need. Effectively, through the rules being implemented through Bill 37, there are two sets of rules being created. A set of rules for the municipal board, which does not mandate that notification be sent to local residents, and those for municipalities, which requires a very specific notification process to residents, which, if violated, often winds up in court or having to repeat an appeal process or a public hearing process, rather. There is a solution to this problem. And simply put, for applications that are being sent to the municipal board that have not yet had a public hearing before a municipal or city council, require that municipal board hearing go through the same public notification process as outlined in the Manitoba Planning Act. This means notices on the property or mail outs to property owners within 300 feet of the property. The process for public hearing notification should not change regardless if it is going to the Manitoba Municipal Board or to a local council. People have the right to be notified and to have a say in what is happening in their community. My second point I want to talk about tonight is the idea of, pardon me, before I get into that, relating to municipal boards. It might be time to consider a requirement that planning applications sent to the municipal board be reviewed by a registered professional planner as part of the technical team and technical assistance afforded to the Manitoba Municipal Board, especially for those applications that have not yet gone to a public hearing process. Under Bill 37, it is possible for applications to go to a Manitoba Municipal Board without a public hearing being held at the local level, which means that a planner may not even have had an opportunity to complete a report to council, much less the municipal board. Planners bring a unique perspective and understanding to land development and the impacts it'll have on the social, economic, and environmental fabric of our communities. There is already provisions in the Municipal Board Act that state that technical staff may be appointed to assist in certain matters, and perhaps it's time to either broaden that or consider enacting that on a permanent basis, requiring that planners be involved in municipal board processes involving planning applications. The second area I wish to discuss tonight is the idea of combined site development applications. Now, we've heard a bit of mention of this already, as this is a process that exists in Winnipeg, but it's not afforded to the rest of Manitoba. Bill 37 focuses on appeals as a means of improving development processes. I find this to be primarily a stick. And certainly appeals can be an important process of the development standards and ensuring a fair process has been gone through. But it's not a tool that should be used permanently or as the only tool available. There are other options, such as combined site development applications. So right now in rural Manitoba, if you want to develop a piece of land, might be required that you go through a rezoning process, subdivide the property, and if necessary, obtain variances and conditional use approvals. Each of these steps requires a separate application, a separate decision from council, which means a separate resolution, and depending on the application, potentially separate public hearings, isolated from one another. With the new appeals processes being introduced in the proposed changes, this also means that there could potentially be separate appeal hearings for each of these items being brought forward. That's a separate appeal for rezoning, a separate appeal for subdivisions, a separate appeal for conditional uses, and then separate appeals for development agreements. And it should be noted that development agreements are different, do have some different requirements or items that can be included as part of zonings and subdivisions. They are not the same requirements. As you can imagine, this creates an incredibly complicated set of procedures and decision-making processes where, depending how applications have been made, an application to rezone a property may not include discussion of how the lots will be created as part of the subdivision process. And during those appeal processes and appeal hearings, you can't talk about the subdivision for an appeal on a rezoning application. This is councils are forced to navigate complicated legal procedures for the order in which decisions are made. Often approval of an application is conditional on the approval of another application. It's a muddy, complicated bureaucratic process that is often not even necessary, and it's far from transparent for the public. By including this for rural Manitoba, especially for those areas in which Plan 2050 is expecting and requiring higher density development, it'll be imperative that we have better tools to implement development faster, more equitably, and more transparently for the public. Combined site development applications allow us to undergo this single process for rezoning, subdivisions, and other types of approvals. The city of Winnipeg already can do this. So why can't rural Manitoba, especially places that are more denser, places like the city of Selkirk, Steinbach, Prince Prairie, and the areas immediately surrounding Winnipeg? Thank you. That concludes my comments for tonight. I do thank you for the opportunity to present to the Standing Committee this evening.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bell. We will roll right into questions. The Honourable Minister.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for bringing your professional. I know you're registered as a private citizen, but you're a professional planner. So thank you for your input on this. The Municipal Board does have rules regarding advertising hearings in order to notify the public. So that's just one point I wanted to make. But you talked about density. And I was just wondering, we had a few different opinions on density earlier tonight. I was wondering if you can elaborate on what, in your professional opinion, what density ranges you think new development should be considering?
Mr. Bell.
Thank you for the question. I'll be honest, at this point in time, I don't feel it's appropriate for me to be commenting on density requirements in different areas. Winnipeg and the areas surrounding Winnipeg are very diverse places, and a mix of densities, it really ranges. So I don't feel comfortable commenting on that, especially without adequate information available to me. But thank you for the question.
Further questions? Mr. Wiebe.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Bell. I think your expertise is very valuable here this evening. I especially appreciated you sort of walking us through the real world implications that you see, the additional red tape that this bill actually will create, and some of the concerns that you have there, especially around appeals, because as you said in your presentation, it's a very heavy-handed, I think you called it a stick type approach, and we've certainly heard that from other presenters, that this is an appeal first kind of piece of legislation. Really doesn't help move things forward, and in fact potentially just gums up the whole process. So I do appreciate you giving your expertise here and helping us better understand as a planner what you see some of the pitfalls and how that will actually play out in the real world. So no additional question, but thank you for your presentation this evening.
Mr. Bell, any response to Mr. Wiebe?
No response, but thank you again for the opportunity to present, and thank you for your comments.
All right, any further questions from members of the committee? Seeing none, then we will proceed to the next presenter. I want to thank Mr. Bell for his time this evening and for answering the questions put to him. I will now call on Brian Ward from Qualico and ask the moderator to invite them into the meeting. And I'd ask Brian Ward to unmute yourself and turn your video on. All right, Mr. Ward, I believe I can see you now. You can begin with your presentation. You have up to 10 minutes.
Yes, thank you. Thank you to the committee for the opportunity to present to you this evening. As was said, my name is Brian Ward. I'm the VP of Qualico Communities in Winnipeg. And so we're the land development group or arm of Qualico, which is a Winnipeg-based privately owned real estate company. And we are celebrating our 70th year in operation this year. And we've been very fortunate over the years to develop a number of communities and continue to develop neighborhoods in many of the metro region municipalities, and look forward to continuing that on. This evening, I will keep my comments extremely brief, as I have the good fortune of being after a number of my colleagues, Lanny McInnes, Mr. Crothers, and Mr. Borger, who have all expressed comments and sentiments that are very much aligned with my own. Before making very brief comments, I would like to thank the Minister, Deputy Minister Gray, his department in particular, for all of their engagement efforts over the past many months that I've had the opportunity to participate in, both as a stakeholder and a developer, and as a representative of UDI. Additionally, I did have the fortunate opportunity to participate in the Bill 37 working group on behalf of the Urban Development Institute. I do believe this was a very meaningful process where there were a number of issues were raised to provide feedback to the government on this piece of legislation. And I do sincerely hope that that working group has the opportunity to continue providing that input to the government in the development of regulations if the legislation moves forward. So as I mentioned, I will keep it very brief, but as my colleagues have raised and as I support the position expressed by UDI, as well as a number of the comments from Mr. Crothers, moving towards a capital region plan, along with the very important work for infrastructure planning for the future growth and strength of our region is incredibly important, and it's an opportunity that we should capitalize on most certainly. Including amendments to address appeal processes and attached timelines is positive as well. And I do share some of the comments or concerns expressed by Mr. Crothers about the service standards. While I think it's great to add service standards to application processes, I do share some of the concerns raised around clarity of ensuring that we understand what a complete application is when the timeline starts. And as Mike raised, or Mr. Crothers raised, some of the processes outside those in the legislation for service standards that do create challenges for us in the development industry, either ahead of this application process or after, as Mike previously described. I also share the concern raised related to adding the opportunity for development agreements on building permits in particular, particularly with the lack of clarity on the specific situations where that's a tool that some municipalities feel would be useful. And I would also request that those portions of the legislation be removed or not be proclaimed so that they could be worked on further to identify those specific situations and ensure that the legislation is focused on them. I think that is all I have this evening. I don't want to repeat again too much of the clear commentary provided by my colleagues, and I'd certainly be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Ward, for your presentation. We'll roll right into questions. The Honourable Minister.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Ward, and I'd like to thank you for your contribution in building Manitoba and moving it forward, of course, in the positive direction. And I would also take this opportunity to pass on your thanks to the department. Just moments ago, he was here. He probably took a bio break. Our Deputy Minister, Mr. Gray, and so I'll pass on those kind words for you. And hopefully we can move forward with maybe getting some clarity through regulation on this. It seems like that's a concern of a few people, and should be addressed in the not too distant future. So thank you for presenting today.
Mr. Ward, any response to the Minister?
Very briefly, thank you for the opportunity again. And yes, I did notice Deputy Minister Gray in the background. The regulations, I think Mr. Borger mentioned it, the devil being in the details. The regulations will be extraordinarily important in making sure that the intended consequences of this legislation to strengthen the region, to provide clarity, to streamline our development application process, that we do achieve those and that we don't, unfortunately create some unintended consequences, some of the concerns that Mr. Crothers and myself have raised. And I look forward to the opportunity to participate in that very important process to implement the legislation if it's passed.
Further questions from members of the committee? Mr. Bushy.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Ward. Thank you for your presentation and also your colleagues. And I appreciate you sticking it out through a longer evening to be able to have your turn to be able to share some of your views. And we've had a number of presenters speak about Bill 37, I guess previously known as Bill 48. And most have spoken about potential improvement of Bill 37 over Bill 48. But the consensus seems to be that there's still a need for improvement to be made. So I'm just wondering, in your opinion, do you feel that because they've called on improvements from 48 to 37, and we're still calling on improvements, that it's still too early to bring this bill forward, and there's still a lot of consultation to be done?
Mr. Ward.
I think there have been many opinions expressed tonight with lots of good suggestions and lots of amendments raised by a number of municipalities as well as folks from the industry and other professionals. And I hope the committee gives due consideration to all of them and will move forward as the committee sees appropriate with its recommendations. As Mr. Borger said, there's certainly room for improvement, but there are some critical steps that we need to make and keep moving forward as a region and as a province.
Further questions from members of the committee? All right, then I've not seen any. So Mr. Ward, I do want to thank you once again for your time and for the presentation you made this evening, and also your contributions to our city and our province. And we'll roll forward to the next presenter. I'd like to call Sheila Mowat, the CAO of the Arm of East St. Paul, and ask the moderator to invite them into this meeting. And Sheila Mowat, I would ask that you unmute yourself and turn your audio on. I believe we can see you now. Welcome to the committee meeting. Thanks for sticking with us into this late hour. You have up to 10 minutes to make your presentation. Go ahead.
Thank you and good evening. I'm Sheila Mowat. I'm the CAO for the RM of East St. Paul, and I'm presenting tonight on behalf of my municipal council. The municipality of East St. Paul is eager to collaborate with the province on a bill that will reduce the red tape on development and attract business to our province. We appreciate some of the positive changes in the newly updated Bill 37, originally Bill 48, including the reduced timeline to submit an appeal from 90 days to 30, and a required review of Bill 37 in 3 years. That being said, the municipality does not feel that the majority of our concerns from Bill 48 have been addressed in the revised Bill 37. Bill 37 must outline more detailed parameters around process and timelines. The municipality would like to retain authority and autonomy. Council members have intimate knowledge of how their communities function and therefore should be considered an asset in the decision-making process. The following is a list of East St. Paul concerns. Parameters around appeals. Parameters around appeals should be provided within Bill 37 and not dealt with through the regulations of the legislation. The following are the municipality's desired updates. Grounds for appeal. Should be a detailed listing in the bill to prevent frivolous appeals for both the province and the municipality. Appeal timeline, further reduced from 30 days to 14 days. Timelines should be imposed on the province also, not just on the municipalities. Items subject to appeal. The municipality would like to see fewer items subject to appeal with the following removed: conditional use and development agreements. The municipality would like to continue focusing time and growth on attracting commercial development rather than appeals. Associated costs. Municipalities will face additional costs from the municipal board appeal hearings. There is the cost to the municipality for staff to prepare and present at the hearings and associated legal costs. Currently, there is no compensation contemplated for municipalities, only for developers. We request a remedy on compensation for municipalities. Lack of autonomy. The municipal board, being the only appeal body, will result in a lack of local expertise and contextual understanding. Reason for decision. The municipality would like this removed from Bill 37. Council does not want to have to be compelled to provide a reason for a decision when an application is denied. there can be various reasons for the rejection, as each elected member of council could have a different reason for doing so. Imposed deadlines. Imposed deadlines on development agreements will be difficult for the municipality to meet. Many factors can cause delays, such as, but not limited to, the applicant, staffing levels, lot grade drainage plans not meeting the approved standards for requiring many reviews by the municipal engineer. Bill 37 should be updated to outline exactly when the 90 days begins. In our situation, this would be when the lot grade drainage plan meets the approved standards and has been reviewed, stamped, and initialed by our municipal engineer. So in conclusion, the municipality of East St. Paul is eager to collaborate with the province on a bill that will reduce the red tape on development and attract business to the province. In order to proceed in a cohesive region that will attract global business, we should start the collaborative process at the legislative level. And we would like to see a bill that is clear and provides detailed parameters, preventing confusion, further delays, and undue costs for all the municipalities and the province alike. The municipality reinforces and supports the AMM amendments to Bill 37, which are based on lessons learned from other Canadian provinces. Thank you for your time.
All right, thank you, Ms. Mowat, for your presentation. We'll roll right into questions. The Honourable Minister.
Yeah, thank you very much for presenting here tonight, Mrs. Mowat, and I just wanted to touch base a little bit on the timelines of when the clock starts and when it doesn't. You know, we collaborate all the time, and we'd like to obviously continue that with yourself and your municipality and everybody else in the region. And we can probably address those issues through regulation. So we will definitely be reaching out in the future if this bill passes today to ensure that we have all those considerations in place. So that being said, thank you for serving in local government, and thank you for your time here tonight.
Ms. Mowat, any response to the Minister?
I just wish to thank the Minister for allowing me the opportunity to present tonight.
All right, further questions, Mr. Wiebe.
Well, thank you very much, Ms. Mowat, for joining us here this evening. Once again, I think your comments echo very much the comments that we've heard from other elected officials, from other CAOs throughout the evening. There are certainly a number of concerns that you've raised, and I'm hoping the Minister is listening. I'm hoping that this message is getting through. You know, once again, you're in luck because we have your MLA here at the table, and I see him taking notes right now as we speak. He's writing down furiously everything that you said, and I think he's going to give the Minister an earful as soon as he has an opportunity here in committee. Because, you know, if he's listening to the local concerns in his constituency, then he's hearing them clearly here tonight. I hope that he would do that and bring those forward. I wanted to just point out very quickly, you had mentioned about service standards with regards to the provincial level. I think that's an important piece of this and something that we should look at. I hear the Minister saying that, you know, potentially this could be done in regulations, but this is one of the bills that we held up as an opposition. We gave the Minister a year to actually go back to the drawing board and do some work. Maybe I can just ask you, did you hear from the Minister? Did you have consultations from the Minister asking what could be done better in this bill before we came to committee tonight? And do you have any faith in the, well, maybe that's a bridge too far, but I know others have expressed a concern that they don't have the faith that some of their concerns will be reflected in regulation. So I'll just leave it at the consultation piece. Have you had a chance to sit down with the Minister and express these before this meeting here this evening?
Ms. Mowat.
We did have an opportunity to write a letter to the previous Minister, and we did have an opportunity to have a virtual meeting with the previous Minister as well, to be able to bring forward our concerns with the bill. So we have taken advantage of any opportunities that we have been given to present our case. We've also worked with the AMM and made sure that we forwarded our concerns to them as well, and also collaborated with, you know, the other municipalities in the capital region to make sure that, you know, everybody had a chance to voice their concerns. So anytime there has been an opportunity, we have ensured that we have taken advantage of it to bring forward our concerns.
All right, thank you, Ms. Mowat. Any further questions from members of the committee? Mr. Wharton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good to see you again, Sheila. It's great. I always said when I was Minister of Municipal Relations, I always said the hardest working member of council is the CAO. So you've proven me right again. So you are the hardest working member, and thanks for taking the time tonight to present on behalf of the council of the RM of East St. Paul. And certainly, you know, we are a government that listens, as you very well know, and certainly I know the minister, and we take a whole of government approach, and we are listening tonight, and I appreciate the comments that you put on the record. And as my colleagues have said, certainly through the regulation process, we are looking forward to that as we go forward to make sure that this process works well for all municipalities, so we create a win-win throughout. So again, thank you for those for your comments, and look forward to working with you and your council in the future.
Ms. Mowat, you have up to 30 seconds to respond.
I just wanted to thank the minister and everyone for taking the time to hear us, and we'll definitely take you up on your offer to work with you to bring forward our concerns and to work out, you know, a solution that works for everybody, because we're all on the same page that we want to advance and have more economic development in our province. We just want to make sure that everybody's on the same page.
All right, thank you very much, Ms. Mowat. That's all the time we have for questions for you. I want to thank you for taking the time to join with us even at this late hour, and for making your presentation and answering all the questions. We're going to move to the next presenter, so I'd like to call Michael Lachmanek, who is the CAO of the RM of Cartier, and ask the moderator to invite them into the meeting. And Michael Lachmanek, I'm probably saying that wrong, but I would like to ask you to unmute yourself and turn your video on. Oh, I'm afraid we may have some technical difficulties with Mr. Lachmanek. So with the indulgence of the committee, if he does manage to join again soon, we'll get right back to him.
He's not on the call. So
he's no longer on the call?
He literally just left, so we'll do the usual drop him
Okay.
to the list.
The direction from the clerk is that we should drop him to the bottom of the list, which isn't very far away. So I will drop Michael Lachmanek to the bottom of the list, and we'll proceed to our next presenter, which is Krista Van Mitchell, private citizen. However, Krista Van Mitchell is not on either, so we will be dropping her name to the bottom of the list, and then we'll proceed to the next presenter, which is Tim Comack. And Tim Comack, I want to ask the moderator to invite you into the meeting, and then I'd ask that you would unmute yourself and turn your video on. Excellent, there you are. Congratulations. You know, I think you won the presenter lottery by getting your time slot moved up almost a half an hour in a mere 10 seconds there. But I'm glad you're ready to go, and you have up to 10 minutes to make your presentation. Go right ahead.
Thank you. Good evening. I appreciate the opportunity to speak today, and I want to thank you for being given the opportunity to be part of the Bill 37 working group and the Winnipeg Metro Region Plan 2050 planning consultation processes. In my opinion, these were gold standard consultations and in-depth planning processes that far exceeded my expectations as a professional developer and many of my colleagues as well. The provincial administrators that led these processes need to be congratulated for having undertaken one of the most impressive consultation and collaboration processes many people have experienced. As a developer, my company is one of the largest residential subdivision developers in the Winnipeg Metro region outside the city, and most certainly one of the largest home builders and apartment developers within the region as a whole. We build well over 200 to 300 new homes each year, have 4 large communities under development, and also participate in mid-size infill development and large-scale greenfield development, apartment development. Our company has over 30 years of history building and developing in the Winnipeg Metro region. I'm a director of the Urban Development Institute, Parade Homes committee member, and technical advisory committee member for the City of Winnipeg's infill guidelines. I've got almost 16 years of experience in this industry and plan to be involved for at least another 30. So I'll see the Plan 2050 to its fruition, I hope. The legislation is visionary. and as a result, it's also controversial in nature. It creates accountability and ensures responsible and intelligent planning for growth takes place while we grow the Winnipeg Metro region. This is something that we need to focus on as our infrastructure costs continue to climb and housing costs continue to follow. We fully support the establishment of the Winnipeg Metro region and strongly believe the WMR Plan 2050 has been an exceptional outcome aligned with the Bill 37 legislation, a bill we believe is important for our province. This bill will be instrumental to orderly and reliable investment within the region. It's my opinion that this bill is only controversial because it ensures a sober second thought is applied to how our province grows, its most important economic region. But I do believe this oversight should hardly ever be needed, based on our current overall experience developing in the region. And when needed, this bill will be an important tool to ensure policies are applied in a uniform and fair manner for the applicant and for the local community. They too can appeal if they feel it's warranted. As we grow over the next 30 years, we need to do so in a manner that makes most sense for Manitobans as a whole. And that smart, well-planned growth isn't hijacked or stalled when it's not in the best interest of our province or when decisions are being made that are not reflective of planning policies in place. This does happen. This is especially true when developments are recommended for approval by the local approving authorities, provincial planning authorities, and professional planners, yet denied at the political level. Generally speaking, each of the municipalities affected by this legislation are good faith actors who approve applications in open, honest, and fair manners. It's generally a very positive experience. Now, there are some parts of this legislation that need to be considered more deeply. It's important that subdivisions, rezonings, and conditional uses are able to be appealed. Not two, not one, but all three. This is because conditional uses are often used as quasi-zoning tools in RMs without any zoning categories for townhouses, duplexes, bare land condominiums, apartments, etc. There's many other reasons why conditional uses are important and should be able to be appealed. They generally speaking align with subdivision approvals and rezoning approvals as well. Also, density targets must be set with a vision for what we want in the future. By Plan 2050's vision itself, we should be looking out 30 to 100 years and not be imposed using an incremental approach. We don't want to be leapfrogging over lower density as we move further outside the city to higher density. That doesn't make sense. We need to follow the pipe and utilize existing infrastructure, roads, sewers, everything, with a focus for density closest to the city and the Winnipeg Metro region's employment lands. It's important that we end the discriminatory zoning practices that municipalities that have abided by for generations as we plan to grow intelligently. We cannot grow in a manner that is exclusive to only one housing type or one exclusive price point for housing. I'd suggest the province takes it upon itself to align the building codes across the metro region and consider how a uniform zoning bylaw could be brought forward for consistency or at least for an example that municipalities can refer to. Development agreements at building stage, you've heard a lot on this tonight. It should only be used to help facilitate infill development within the mature communities of Winnipeg, known as Area 1 and 2 within the infill guidelines the City of Winnipeg just put forward at standing policy this morning. These development agreements should only be allowed if they align with clear and concise infrastructure studies within local area plans, and those should be part of those local area plans, infrastructure studies. Anything else could be perceived as enabling a new de facto impact fee on all buildings being constructed in the City of Winnipeg. I think that was just struck down. I do believe that it can be dealt with during the creation of the regulations for this bill and then amended in the framework or scope as it changes over time. Processing requirements for applications and appeals processes for decision-making are integral to ensure that growth is managed according to bylaws, development plans, visionary documents like the Winnipeg Metro Region Plan, and development plan bylaws and policies. This is integral to growth of the Metro region to ensure investment across the region's many municipal boundaries are consistent. Reliable and good faith processes can help the region flourish, and good investment can follow. With all that said, our experience building and developing in the Winnipeg Metro region, the surrounding Winnipeg, developing in Winnipeg and the surrounding Winnipeg Metro region is generally a fantastic experience, often resulting in great investments and successful projects that benefit the communities we operate in. We're blessed to be so lucky to have many great partners, professional relationships, and positive business experiences with rural municipalities surrounding Winnipeg and in Winnipeg as well. By far and large, the experiences are fair, and the elected officials, alongside their administrators, are consummate professionals. But not always. Sometimes things happen. politics sometimes get in the way. This legislation will only serve to ensure that those experiences continue to be positive as the metro region experiences unprecedented growth. And where conflict may exist, opportunities to right those wrongs, or at least be heard, are offered by the province. I think that makes sense. And I think this legislation in its format will encourage local decision makers and stakeholders to undertake fair, open, and transparent processes that align with development plans, the Winnipeg Metro Region Plan, and local development policies. And if that's the case, like I said, we shouldn't see many backlogs at the municipal boards. And if we do, then I think we have a larger problem at hand, and we might have to review how this legislation is dealt with as far as scope is concerned at a future date. It's my professional opinion that the instruments and tools created within this visionary legislation, legitimate and bona fide applications like this, that they get stalled out, won't be stalled out in the future. Growth and change will always cause controversy. But if we ensure we plan for this coming growth and put the tools in place to ensure we encourage investment, we can overcome the controversy and ensure we protect our infrastructure investments while we grow methodically in the best interest of our province's most important economic engine. The result will be a revving of this provincial economic engine. And I believe we'll look back and see this as being one of the more pivotal pieces of legislation, especially when it comes to our economic recovery after this pandemic. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Comack, for your presentation. We'll now roll right into questions. The Honourable Minister.
Yes, well, thank you, Mr. Comack, Tim, for staying around so late tonight. We appreciate it, and we appreciate your opinion on the bill. And I guess I want to thank you and your family and your company for putting Manitoba where it is with all of your development you've done. I don't think we'd be sitting in the same place as a province without your and your colleagues' input. So thank you for that. There's three things that maybe I'll ask you to comment. First, thank you for calling it visionary legislation. I'd like to thank my predecessor, of course, or multiple predecessors for working on this. But you mentioned density targets, so that's one thing I'll ask you to elaborate on. And follow the pipe is another thing. Not everybody understands the concept of using current infrastructure and stuff, so maybe I'll get you to elaborate on that a little bit. And then I'm going to beat my colleague to the question of consultation, since he seems to be asking that tonight. So I was hoping you could comment on those three things in the few minutes we have left.
Mr. Comack.
So from a density target perspective, it's important that we understand that the industry is responding to a market need. And so from that perspective, we have to be able to provide a variety of housing styles and types across a spectrum of different people's housing life cycles and needs. And in that vein, right now already in the capital region, areas like LaSalle, Dugald, Stonewall, we're approving densities of 6.5 to 9.5 units per acre on projects that I can very easily demonstrate and provide background information for. I've discussed these with the province in the past. So from that perspective, the idea that we're limiting East St. Paul, West St. Paul, and Headingley to 4 units per acre, but yet the urban centers further out, 15 to 25 minutes, their minimum density targets are set at 4.8. Something about that doesn't really align with me well. And I don't think that we want to be in a position where 100 years from now, we look back and we've leapfrogged from the perimeter outward over lower density to higher density. And I think that's an important thing to think about. From the perspective of follow the pipe and infrastructure, take a look at your major thoroughfares, your major highways, and your major roads, and your employment centers and your employment lands. Where the infrastructure exists, that's where efficient growth should take place. And that's to the best interest of the province as a whole, both your provincial budgeting and as well, on top of that, every resident that we ultimately will see reside there. They should be closer to wherever it is they need to go. Consultation, I've been involved in a lot of different committees, organizations, boards, charitable, non-charitable, etc., and been involved in running a pretty large company for quite some time now. And I'd suggest to you that what they put forward, your administrators, Mr. Neufeld and his team, it was absolutely the gold standard for access, transparency, clarity, communication, consultation, collaboration, especially when you align it alongside the process that Colleen Sklar undertook for the Winnipeg Metro Region Plan. That was exhaustive. And I mean, the different conferences that she set up and all the different workshops that people were involved in, and the cross-sectional involvement of different groups and organizations, that the lens was just so wide. I find it hard to believe that anyone thinks that this wasn't a broad consultation. It's a bit disappointing to hear that, because I actually have the opinion that it was gold standard.
All right, further questions from the committee. Mr. Wiebe.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Comack, for your participation here this evening. I think having your expertise is helpful, and your perspective is also helpful for us to understand. I'm not sure if you had joined the committee earlier, and I got to apologize because on the Zoom I can only see the presenter who's here, in front of us. But early on in the evening, we heard from the city of Selkirk, and they had some pretty significant concerns about being included in Bill 37 and being included in what's being called the Metro region. Can you just maybe speak to that? Have you heard those same concerns either here this evening or before? Maybe as part of your consultation work, you talk about some of the boards that you've been on and some of the other working groups. Did you hear that concern, and maybe can you speak to their inclusion into Bill 37?
Mr. Comack, 45 seconds.
Those are very important parts of the Winnipeg Metro region, and those are large urban centers that, for a big piece of many different industries, are the result of, kind of the go-to location for various parts of that part of the municipalities, Winnipeg Metro region, sorry. It only makes sense to include as many of the urban centers as you can that make sense within this plan as we plan to grow for the next 30 plus years and share across multiple boundaries different infrastructure, fire trucks, for example, garbage dump sites. There's a broader vision here than just housing. And so from my end here, including as many of those urban centers as possible is important, intelligent, and I'm surprised to hear that anybody resists being a part of this plan, because it could drive the decisions that outside organizations make to locate in places like Selkirk or places around Selkirk. And as a result, it's important that the province ensures that that lens is applied in a much larger boundary than I guess maybe they feel is warranted.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Comack, for your time tonight. That's all the time we have for questions. So I want to thank you for your presentation and for the robust answers you've given to some of the questions put to you. I'm going to now call the last presenter on my list, Mark Olson. And I'd like to ask the moderator to admit Mr. Olson into the meeting. And I'd ask Mark Olson if you could unmute yourself and turn your video on, please. All right, I can see you there. You have the distinction of being our final presenter for this evening, at least until I do second call. And so I just wanted to welcome you here and allow you to begin your presentation. You have up to 10 minutes. Go ahead.
Thank you for welcoming me, and also thank you for all you're doing. All of you are playing a major role in this very important decision. My name is Mark Olson, and I am the president and CEO of Landstar Development Corporation. We've been in the land development business for 35 years, and we're very proud of to be able to create places for people to work, play, and live. It's a great feeling of being a developer when you create something out of nothing, and it's an exciting process and sometimes very frustrating. Bill 37 provides an avenue for fairness for the parties developing real estate. As a developer, I know better than to ask for some things I know I shouldn't get. However, it's the issues that are nearly certain that should happen that don't, which cause us untold pain. I've listened to every party speaking tonight, and no one seems to be not opposed to creating a better process for allowing a fair process. Let me touch on a few of the comments that some of the people have made. Earlier tonight, I heard Cam Bright from, I guess he's with the Association of Manitoba Municipalities. He's the president of that group, and he stated that that we should leave the decision making to the RMs. Bill 37 addresses the problems that deal with that process. Anyone that develops real estate, all they want is to be treated fairly, respectfully, and within a reasonable period of time, which obviously Bill 37 is aimed at. He also stated that their similar bill in Ontario at the outset created 1,000 appeals. That statement to me proves that Bill 37 is needed desperately. it doesn't say why it shouldn't be enacted. It seems like a very good direction for solving problems. Tonight, I heard that Bill 37 disrespects RMs, stated by Mayor Bowman. This process in the capital region disrespects individual property owners' rights that providing process for resolving solutions to issues that can't be resolved by the governing bodies and the developers themselves during that process. Mayor Christian of West St. Paul stated that we should leave the concerns to DAs to the courts, which I think most of us would understand that 4 to 5 year process with appeals and many hundreds of thousands of dollars in court costs, and would fill the courts from that perspective, or we would have them full already if that was a good process to use. The mayor also wants the CAOs to be the representatives on the board, and keep in mind that the CAOs do most of the discussion and involvement in the DAs. We need independent groups to hear this appeal, not the same people that couldn't work out the issues in the first place. Brent Olenek, the CAO from West St. Paul, stated that developers aren't paying their share of development costs. Developers pay 100% of the cost of developments. We pay for every bit of asphalt, road, concrete, lights, street signs, land, sewer pipes, water pipes. So that's not true. We pay our share, and matter of fact, we pay everything in that regards. In our particular development in West St. Paul, the residents that lived on Drury had worn out the street by using it. We bought the land beside it, was undeveloped, and we replaced that road at no cost to them. And these are some of the benefits that developing real estates in communities can provide. Appealing also, one of the issues I did here is appealing the development agreement would have a problem with locals being able to put input. Well, locals have access to putting input in at the hearing, the original hearing, and those comments can be forwarded by the RMs to the appeal hearing. So that's how they could get representation. That information can go forward to the appeal hearing. Let me be brief to the committee. I know it's getting late, and I actually want to get on with other things too, seeing I've watched about 25 people say what they want. And I'll give you an example why Bill 37 is critical. The current system leaves no right to seek fairness. If you feel like you're being mistreated or clauses are not proper or misstated, there's no process to actually advance that, even though you would think there would be some form of appeal process. So Bill 37 is a great step in the right direction. We received our zoning on our multi-family site in 2005 when the RM and the planning department created an R3 zoning category. There's a significant story throughout many years after that. But since we have limited time, I'll jump to November of 2016 when we were ready to develop our project to the 4-story apartment block with surface parking. We had attended a meeting with the RM CAO with intent to advancing our development agreement and reviewing the site plan. This is in November of 2016. We knew our plan met all the requirements of all the approved R3 zoning without requiring any variances or any other further approvals other than providing the information asked in the original development agreement that we had to provide. It took 5 months after that meeting for the RM to respond to us, and the RM asked for us to provide a number of drawings, which we did over the next few months. And in 2017, November 2017, we received the first rough draft of the development agreement. At that same time, the RM, at the same time, they were preparing a draft DA. The RM introduced a new parking bylaw, amending our zoning designation, increasing it from 1 car to 1.5 cars per unit, even though we were ready to go. We were actually already they introduced a bylaw that hadn't been enacted and inflicted it upon us, even though it hadn't been passed. At the parking bylaw hearing, residents from the area who actually fought our zoning and the original zoning spoke up and said we need 2 cars per unit, and with no professional backup as to why. Council jumped on it and give it their second reading to the amendment, and we effectively appealed that. This doubling our parking ratio from 1 car to 2 cars is no insignificant issue when you have limited land to actually deal with. The appeal board rejected the RM's bylaw, and we won our appeal. We reapproached the RM immediately to get our DA finished. We came with a new plan that actually allowed us to go to 1.5 parking stalls per unit, sort of trying to work into an area where we could be, working with the RM who wanted additional parking. At the same time, as we sent our revised plans, the RM put forward a new bylaw after losing the last one, 1 month after that process, putting forward a new parking bylaw, and that one was 1 month after being defeated on the appeal. Council moved forward and actually approved, gave second and third reading at one meeting, and we objected, saying we wanted to appeal that process because of a new planning act that came in. We weren't able to actually make that appeal, even though we 1 month earlier we had appealed the same concept and won. Just to be clear, we presented our plans to the RM and for the development in November of 2016 and passed the bylaw in June of 2000. They passed the bylaw for parking in 2018. We were held up by this time, and we asked them to grandfather us at that point, and they refused to do it. 2019, August 13th, we asked council for a variance, and as of yet, we have not received a decision in writing if we got the variance. We were told that we didn't get it, but we never received any confirmation in writing at all, even though we made 10 requests for them to provide that information. The bylaw caused us to add underground parking, which was a $2.8 million add for a building. We were going to go with, as I stated earlier, all surface parking. This is when driverless cars are simply years away from doing it. And the city of Winnipeg is actually reducing parking ratios, not increasing them. So a significant increase ratio from 1.1 to 1.81, which was the one that got approved, it basically prohibits us from actually meeting our density that the RM have transferred from one side of our development to the other while we cooperated with them. So once we got the development density on our site, they changed the parking ratio, which didn't allow us to do that density.
Mr. Olson, you've got about 30 seconds.
Okay. So anyways, let me skip to the last part here. This is a $40 million development. Bill 37 is a positive effect to providing balance in the discussion of development agreements. And in closing, this doesn't mean that the municipal board will overturn every appeal. It just means a duty of fairness will be applied. I find it difficult to understand why anyone would oppose Bill 37. Anyways,
all
that's
right. Thank you very much, Mr. Olson, for your presentation and apparently for being with the members of the committee all night long. So I suppose I can say that we appreciated your company virtually. We're going to roll right into questions and turn the floor over to the Honourable Minister.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Olson, and I'd like to thank Landstar, your company, and the years of investments that you've done in Winnipeg and Manitoba. I guess we're kind of fortunate you're the last one. You kind of gave us a Coles Notes at the beginning of your statement all the way through. So, we've heard different words throughout the night, and consistent, timely, efficiency, transparency, accountability, modernizing, streamline. Mr. Comac just added visionary legislation. So I think I'd like to add your comments of avenue for fairness. That seems to be words of wisdom. I was just wondering if you could elaborate on a few things. I guess having density and different things, and I was just hoping you could maybe comment on leveraging of resources or economies of scale in your development, and how this would potentially help with that for you as a developer.
So just to give you an idea,
Mr. Olson, I have to recognize you first. So Mark Olson, go ahead.
Just to give you an idea, we spent $6 million of our own money providing the resources inside the development, which are roads, infrastructure, and that. When we got our approvals, it was based on certain densities that we could do. Those densities create value for the developer and help us pay for those improvements. So when you lose the right to do density, that's a significant problem when you start planning. Keep in mind that this started in 2005 and now it's 2021, and we still don't have our development agreement even today. So yeah, it's a very important. Density is a good use of services with a higher density of people. I think obviously our world is headed that way.
All right, further questions, Mr. Wiebe.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Olson. I appreciate your time and joining us virtually. It looks a lot more comfortable where you are than it is here in the committee room. So I'm glad you didn't have to sit here all night, and you could be somewhere a little more comfortable. I appreciate your perspective here. I do appreciate where you're coming from and giving us a bit of a sense of some of the frustrations that you've seen in terms of the process at the local level. As you've probably picked up on here this evening, we are very concerned about the overwhelming of the municipal board. You seem to have a little bit more confidence in the ability of that municipal board to handle a potential influx of new appeals. My question is that, one of the ideas that's been floated is we're talking about having a service standard for municipalities to make sure that they don't get hung up at that part of the process. If there was to be a backlog or a glut of appeals that are happening at the municipal board and they weren't being seen in a timely fashion, do you think that having a service standard for the municipal board would also be helpful to make sure that the process doesn't get hung up on either side?
Mr. Olson.
It's a, thank you for the question. It is an issue that, having a process that moves along quickly, considering the amount of money. I do believe that money spent in this part of our society and approving and getting these appeals to go forward are basically very, very valuable to our society. Keep in mind, if we had our zoning in 2005 and we applied in 2016 finally to get our apartment block, if we would have had that done, we would have built it already. The property taxes would have been collected. People would have been living there, and we would be reinvesting our money in our community and elsewhere. Instead, we're still sitting here waiting and suffering, waiting to get our final development agreement. So it's needed, and we have to spend the money on that, things that create real serious money for our economy.
All right, any further questions from members of the committee? Seeing none, I want to thank you, Mr. Olson, for your time this evening and for being willing to present and stick with us all the way to the to close to the end at least, and also answer the questions presented to you. I'm now going, that's the end of the list of presenters that I have, so I'm going to go back and call for a second time a few presenters who were not here. So under Bill 53, Norman Rosenbaum apparently is still not with us, so his name will be removed from the list of presenters. And then Michael Lackmanek. Michael Lackmanek, CAO of the RM of Cartier, is apparently available, so I'd ask the moderator to invite them into this meeting and ask them to unmute themselves and turn their video on. All right, I think we see you now. Welcome, welcome, Michael, to this meeting. I'm not going to butcher your last name any further than I already have. You have up to 10 minutes to make your presentation. Go ahead.
Yes, my name isn't exactly like Bond, James Bond, but thank you very much to the committee. The RM of Cartier very much appreciates this opportunity to provide feedback. I'm here representing the Reeve and Council, and just as an FYI, following this presentation, we will provide this document to moderator 255 for inclusion in the Hansard. As a premise, increased collaboration and alignment between municipalities is a very noble objective and something we believe in. The premise has positive potential. However, we feel Bill 37 is complex, far-reaching, and full of significant negative implications for a vast majority of stakeholders. We consider Bill 37 to be flawed because of these negative impacts forced upon municipalities, and they far exceed any nascent benefits. So the RM welcomes the opportunity and the necessity it feels to work with all stakeholders to improve the contents of Bill 37. So the RM of Cartier challenges the province, the committee, and all effective stakeholders to do better. There are 5 core areas of concern for us within Bill 37, and these pillars of concern are grouped in the premise and governance of Bill 37, consultation and timeframes, autonomy and unknowns, consistency and reciprocity, and resources and administration. We hope further significant changes to Bill 37 occur. However, should changes not occur, we would have to consider the option or means to leave the current collective if positive equitable benefits to our ratepayers do not exist. So our ask is that hopefully we can pause Bill 37, conduct meaningful stakeholder consultation, and improve the positive premises within the bill. And by the way, to all of the former presenters who've had bad experiences in land development, please, we welcome you, and we'll make sure that any experiences you had in the past do not reflect what's going on in the future. The RM of Cartier is open for business and ready for opportunity. So with those buckets, the first one with regards to board composition is that it's made by regulation and not quite defined the way we would hope it to be. Also, the impetus for Bill 37 and the actual outcomes seem to be disconnected, as some of the speakers have pointed out before, with the planning, zoning, and permitting in Manitoba. So there would be some significant financial implications and loss of autonomy with some of those consequences should Bill 37 go forward as structured. There's also voting structure, which is yet to be determined, and this can have deleterious effects on representation. So without clarity, this will create hard-coded governance inequities. And so without that clarity, we feel that we need to surround the how of the representation so it provides an opportunity for constructive and cogent feedback on governance. Right now, that opportunity we feel doesn't exist. Bureaucracy, Bill 37 actually creates an additional unnecessary layer of bureaucracy. Many of the functions of the Regional Planning Board are already capably dealt with by municipalities or planning districts. This questions the rationale for uploading these responsibilities to a new layer of authority and presents the logical conclusion that this will create the eventual demise of local administration, perhaps even local reeves and councils and district planning boards. With regards to some of the mechanisms, they've been dealt with already tonight with regards to appeals. Applicants will now be able to appeal municipal council decisions to the regional board. What we find troubling is that, for example, in the case of rezoning that has been appealed, council can only require a development agreement if the municipal board allows. Again, that ties the hands of municipal administration or councils. Subdivision applications, there are similar things with that. And it removes the local subject matter expertise from the decision-making processes, and it affects their communities in which they live. Some of the costs, it can require the municipality to pay for some or all of the costs incurred by the municipal board to have the hearing and or the applicant's quote-unquote reasonable costs. We don't yet know what reasonable costs are, so this lack of clarity could cause the dissipation of self-governance autonomy, and that's worrisome to us. Another bucket is consultation and timeframes. We do feel that the process to date has been suboptimal, and the method of consultation, the frequency of consultation, and the timeframes allotted for feedback and the availability of information to stakeholders has been compressed and in some cases professionally discourteous. There does seem to also be a horizons disconnect when creating a capital planning region with a 30-year time frame with these lasting consequences and major impacts. There are significant coordination of mechanisms that require long-term planning. And as a result, the process and postulations within Bill 37 seem to be rushed and a bit inadequate for the job at hand. For example, Edmonton's similar regional planning exercise took years of consultation. And with that, I think it's important to note that the plan to get this going and then provide 2 years of opportunity for the region to come up with plans and policies, the content to manage within these timeframes is effectively unattainable. When you look at major commercial, industrial development, protection of agricultural land, residential land development, flood protection measures, hazards, water facilities, etc. It should be evident that the complexity and indeterminate consequences and scope of Bill 37, combined with the inadequate consultation that we feel has occurred so far, and the lack of knowns for those municipalities, should immediately provide enough factual matter to pause the legislation and hopefully iteratively improve its premise, the mechanisms, and the content within it. And when it comes to some of the autonomy and unknowns, we feel there is quote unquote favored growth. All industrial growth will be directed, leaving many of the rural municipalities without an equitable playing field. And this could seriously hamper their growth, their future tax base, and where they and how they move in the future, which creates haves and have-nots. And this could be multiplied and exacerbated by Bill 37. So currently, with local autonomy and subject matter expertise, if a plan is considered inconsistent or not in alignment with the regional plan, the municipality cannot approve this if it were a development plan or secondary plan. So this effectively shreds the municipal autonomy and local subject matter expertise that's available in the local RMs. When it comes to some of the other RM unknowns, Bill 37 is short on adequate and meaningful definitions. We look forward to some of those being put forth in a more meaningful way, which would help the clarity and understanding and definitely the buy-in. And then reasonable costs. Again, there's no definition surrounding that, and that's a point of contention for many of the RMs, as you've heard. With regards to consistency and reciprocity, many items have hard-coded responsibilities or service levels assigned to the municipal administrations, but do not have the requisite reciprocal hard-coded responsibilities or service levels for other agencies or provincial government departments or applicants, either developers, planning consultants, etc. So would it not then also be required of these participants intertwined within the municipal administration to also have the same response times and service level agreements attached to their activities? And the capacity is a concern that's been brought up before with regards to the regional boards and how this would lengthen a burden system already. Reimbursements. This is something the board can require the municipality to pay for. And there should also be a similar provision where the municipal board can require the applicant to cover the costs of the municipality or planning district if the appeal itself is deemed unreasonable.
Just a quick time check. You've got about 30 seconds remaining.
Okay, thank you very much. When it comes to resources and administration, much of that has been covered with regards to the time, money, people, and scope that's required to manage Bill 37. And so what we would like to ensure is that we're all for all of these improvements, but we would like to ensure that the cost increases do not have an endless run to it. And right now, there is no limit or recourse or appeal mechanism for municipalities to assert their own fiscal determination with this model currently. So I would like to thank the members of the committee for this opportunity, and hopefully we can move forward in a constructive fashion to develop something that is lasting and effective. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lechmanek, for your presentation. We'll roll right into questions. The Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Michael. And I guess being a CAO, put on my former municipal hat on, you're the front lines of a lot of these, whether it's development plans or anything that comes forward. So we definitely value your opinion, and I'd like to thank you for your presentation today.
Any response for the minister, Mr. Lackmanek?
No, but just thank you for the opportunity to hear myself and others with our concerns. Thank you.
Mr. Wiebe.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Lackmanek, for your presentation this evening. I also want to just thank you as you know, a CAO who has a certain perspective coming here. I think you know exactly some of the burden that this is going to put on your municipality, and also that you're coming as a representative of the elected officials in your RM. And I think that's one of the main themes that we've heard here tonight is that you know, if we want to honor local democracy, if we want to you know, show our appreciation for the work that you do as a CAO and all the members that put their name forward, then it's incumbent on us to listen to you and to listen to the concerns that you brought forward. Again, your concerns have been in lockstep with many others who have brought forward a number of concerns, and we are very worried that this, when rolled out, won't have the effect that ultimately the province is hoping that it will. So I think you have the best experience, and I don't have a question, but I just wanted to thank you for your presentation and for your time here this evening.
Mr. Lackmanek, any response for Mr. Wiebe?
No, just once again, thank you for the opportunity and the forum to be heard.
Further questions? Mr. Wharton?
Chair, and thank you, Mr. Lackmanek, for your presentation as well. And as I said earlier to one of the CAOs on the call tonight, certainly great to see the real front lines of municipal council. Whether you've been there for 2 months or 30 years, you definitely play an active role, and we appreciate that. Certainly looking forward to continued dialogue even after tonight through this great democratic process, and appreciate all the input that you provided as well. And we'll look forward to moving forward for the betterment of all Manitoba municipalities in the next process. So thank you for that.
Mr. Lackmanek, any response to Minister Wharton?
Just we do look forward to dialogue, and while we do have concerns, we're really charged and we want to propel and move forward with the framework that's presented.
All right, any further questions for this presenter? All right, well then we thank you very much, Michael, for your presentation and for taking the time to present tonight and for sticking with it, despite perhaps some technical difficulties when we got to you the first time. So thank you for that. I will now continue with the other presenters to see if they may be available as well. So I would call on Krista Van Mitchell. I'm told Krista Van Mitchell is not available, and so her name too will be removed from the list of presenters. And that concludes the list of presenters that I have before me. So we've now come to the point where we consider clause by clause consideration of these bills. In what order does the committee wish to proceed? Numerical has been proposed. That's agreeable to everybody? Agreed and so ordered. So now we will begin with clause by clause of Bill 25. Does the minister responsible for Bill 25 have an opening statement?
Yeah, a couple of opening comments.
All right, Minister Johnson, go ahead.
Yeah, first of all, I'd like to thank everyone that came out to present on all the bills tonight, and not just this one. This bill will amend 8 acts to increase clarity, reduce red tape, improve efficiency, give municipalities fair say, and create fairness between municipalities and property owners. This bill will give voters in municipal elections the same assurances of those on provincial elections. The elected officials are using their position as incumbents fairly and not using taxpayer resources to influence voters. Before the next municipal election, this bill will require each municipality by bylaw to put in place a municipal election policy that must outline the municipality's restrictions on a candidate's use of municipal resources during an election campaign. The municipal election policy will also be required to set advertising restrictions against any communication that might reasonably be seen as providing an electoral advantage to a registered candidate. This bill removes the requirement for municipalities to update voters lists annually and simplifies the process to occur instead of in the year of general municipal election. This bill will also make changes to make the election process more efficient and reduce red tape. This bill will also allow municipalities to simply refund excess property taxes directly to ratepayers without paying any interest. Currently, municipalities are required to pay a fixed interest rate on any excess taxes which result from a successful appeal of a property's assessment. The municipal board has streamlined processes resulting in shorter timelines to complete appeals. This means that the administrative burden associated with processing interest payments no longer merits this effort. This bill removes interest on excess taxes and will restore balance to the appeal process, as property owners are not required to pay interest when the assessed value of their property increases upon appeal. This bill also strengthens provisions to the Winnipeg residents undergoing the tax sale process by repealing the requirement for the City of Winnipeg to assign a tax sale certificate to anyone with an interest in the property. Our government is aware that this assignment provision has been used by unscrupulous lenders against citizens, and we are taking action. Public libraries have been encouraged to develop regional partnerships, and most municipal public libraries are now a part of a regional library. This bill modernizes the legislation to reflect the current operating structures and ensure public libraries remain exempt from municipal taxation. This bill also eliminates the need for municipalities to seek provincial approval to enter into a lease for durable goods like photocopiers, mail sorting and fax machines, graders, or pickup trucks. These leases will no longer require municipal board approval. This bill will provide discretionary authority for cities like Brandon, Thompson, Portage la Prairie, and Flin Flon to determine their respective council compositions similar to other municipalities. We are proud to introduce these changes which respond to feedback from cities, municipalities, CAOs, elected officials, and other municipal stakeholders. The Association of Manitoba Municipalities indicated broad support for the proposed amendments, noting that the changes will reduce red tape and enhance municipal autonomy. I want to thank everyone again for attending and express my gratitude to all those who submitted a letter of support.
We thank the minister. Does the critic from the official opposition have an opening statement? Mr. Wiebe.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and happy to put a few words on the record with regards to Bill 25, the Municipal Statutes Amendment Act. This bill will allow some municipalities to determine their own council size, make other changes, and attempts to make municipal elections fairer. These are all, of course, laudable goals, but ones that feel hypocritical coming from a government that consistently disrespects municipal governments. And at the same time, they're bringing Bill 32, which significantly weakens our provincial election rules. Manitobans expect different levels of government to cooperate for the good of everyone in our province and to respect each other's authority. The Premier and his government have demonstrated through their actions that they would rather antagonize municipal governments rather than develop solutions with them collaboratively. They've cut municipal budgets, and they've introduced bill after bill to undermine the authority of local government. If the Premier had a good relationship with those municipalities, he would be able to resolve these issues in some way rather than just trying to legislate whatever he wants. Bill 32, as we know, waters down advertising restrictions and fixed date election laws, giving the government an unfair advantage in future election campaigns. For a fixed date election, the restriction period is shortened from 90 to 60 days. And so Bill 32, this government is free to do unlimited advertising of a budget or throne speech right up to election day. This means then that the government can now drop a budget or throne speech and immediately call an election, during which it can spend an unlimited amount of government money promoting the budget or throne speech. Once again, it's one rule for the Pallister government, and another for Manitobans. During these challenging times, strong leadership is crucial for our collective success as a province. Good leaders know how to work with others, even when they don't always agree. Perfect example of this, of course, is this evening, when we had representatives from the City of Winnipeg bringing what we think are fairly reasonable requests, and given the opportunity to the minister to work with them, to actually bring forward their concerns and make elections more democratic and hear their concerns. So far, it sounds like the minister hasn't been open to that conversation. I do hope that that will change as the process goes forward, but we appreciate their presentation here this evening. I'd like to thank the presenters, and for everyone who's followed along with Bill 25, and hope that the minister will then listen to those folks, start working collaboratively, and try to actually work with our municipal partners rather than just legislate more and more powers over them. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
We thank the member. Now, during the consideration of a bill, the enacting clause and title are postponed until all other clauses have been considered in their proper order. And if there's agreement from the committee, I, the chair, will call clauses in blocks that conform to pages, with the understanding that we'll stop at any particular clause or clauses where the members may have comments, questions, or amendments to propose. Is that agreed? Agreed. So, shall clauses 1 through 3 pass? Clauses 1 through 3 are accordingly passed. Shall clauses 4 through 7 pass? Clauses 4 through 7 are accordingly passed. Shall clause 8 pass? Clause 8 is accordingly passed. Shall clauses 9 through 11 pass? Clauses 9 through 11 are accordingly passed. Shall clause 12 pass? Clause 12 is accordingly passed. Shall clauses 13 through 19 pass? Clauses 13 through 19 are accordingly passed. Shall clauses 20 through 23 pass? Clauses 20 through 23 are accordingly passed. Shall clauses 24 through 27 pass? No. I hear a no. Shall clause 24 pass? Yes. I hear a no. Mr. Weeb.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and I just thought maybe we could take an opportunity to pause at this moment. As I mentioned in my opening comments, we did hear from the City of Winnipeg, from the election office at the City Clerk's Department, with some suggestions for the minister, ways to potentially make elections in the City of Winnipeg more democratic. You know, I think this is very much in lockstep with, as I said earlier in my comments, with some of the work that's being done, not just here in Canada, but around the world, looking at how we can actually strengthen our democracy, especially in spite of the pandemic and the challenges that that's put on our system of government. So what I heard was there was 2 recommendations from the City of Winnipeg. One was to look at the day of the week, so that it might be more participatory, and the other was around mail-in ballots. I'm wondering if the minister could just maybe comment. Has he had a conversation with the City of Winnipeg? Are these ideas that he's considered, or would he be willing to consider them in the future?
Thank you, Mr. Weeb. The Honourable Minister.
Yeah, I think those would consider more consultation.
Mr. Weeb.
Well, I appreciate hearing that. It sounds like we have some consultation here this evening. That's kind of the point of the committee. I think we had some members present. Maybe the minister could comment. You know, I see the date on the top of this letter is November 27th, 2020. Did the minister follow up with the City of Winnipeg to explore these ideas a little bit more in depth?
The Honourable, no, Minister.
Yes.
Mr. Weeb.
Okay, minister's being especially coy this evening. I can assure him, he looks a little nervous over there. I can assure him this isn't a gotcha. We're just trying to figure out if this is something that potentially could, as I said, strengthen our democratic process. So he had a further conversation with the City of Winnipeg. Can he let us know why then, I guess, he didn't seek to amend his bill to add these considerations into the bill?
The Honourable Minister.
We would need more consultations.
Mr. Weeb.
Okay, well, you know, it doesn't sound like the minister wants to have a conversation about democracy. Maybe it's getting late. I can give the minister a little bit of leeway here. He looks a little bushed. It was a big night for him, and he had a lot of people giving him a hard time tonight. So maybe this is just a little bit too much to ask from the minister this evening. But maybe I'll just finish off by saying, you know, I think these are considerations that I think we all need to look at, not just for the City of Winnipeg, but for elections in Manitoba or provincial elections going forward. I think there's a lot of value to looking at ways we can make democracy stronger here in the province. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. See no further comments. Shall Clause 24 pass? Clause 24 is accordingly passed. Shall Clause 25 pass? Clause 25 is accordingly passed. Shall Clause 26 pass? Clause 26 is accordingly passed. Shall Clause 27 pass? Clause 27 is accordingly passed. Shall Clause 28 pass? Clause 28 is accordingly passed. Shall Clauses 29 through 31 pass? Clauses 29 through 31 are accordingly passed. Shall Clauses 32 through 35 pass? Clauses 32 through 35 are accordingly passed. Shall Clauses 36 through 39 pass? Clauses 36 through 39 are accordingly passed. Shall Clause 40 pass? Clause 40 is accordingly passed. Shall the enacting clause pass? The enacting clause is accordingly passed. Shall the title pass? The title is accordingly passed. Shall the bill be reported? Agreed. The bill shall be reported. We'll now proceed by clause by clause of Bill 37. Does the minister responsible for Bill 37 have an opening statement? Minister Johnson.
Yes, it's my pleasure to provide opening remarks on the Standing Committee on Bill 37. And over the past year, my department officials, the previous minister and myself had the opportunity to meet with municipal and industry stakeholders to provide information on the proposed legislation and receive their input. I would like to take this opportunity to thank the numerous municipalities, including AMM and other stakeholders who participated in our information sessions, webinars, and working meetings. Their advice has been invaluable to drafting this bill and also will help guide our plans to develop supporting regulations. Bill 37 delivers on the Government of Manitoba to Manitoba's commitment to modernize and streamline the planning process. The bill is a priority for the Government of Manitoba in setting the legislative foundation to implement key planning recommendations from the June 2019 Treasury Board Secretariat report on planning, zoning, and permitting. Specifically, Bill 37 addresses gaps in Manitoba's regulatory framework by mandating regional approaches to planning, starting with Manitoba's capital region, introducing timelines or service standards for planning, enabling appeals to the municipal board when all other attempts to resolve at the local level have not worked. Bill 37 also includes changes to the Planning Act and the City of Winnipeg Charter in direct responses to stakeholder input. I am pleased to highlight some of these changes. Stakeholders asked for greater clarity and transparency around planning regions. Bill 37 includes important changes to address this. The powers of planning regions to acquire or dispose of property is limited to the purpose of implementing its regional plan. Planning region members must agree on a funding that will each contribute to the expenses of a region, and the minister will only prescribe an amount if there is no agreement among these members. Planning region boards must submit their budget to each member municipality and the minister, and along with the minister must consult with potential member municipalities before establishing any future planning regions beyond the Winnipeg capital region that is specified in this bill. Planning appeals are fundamental to an open and fair planning system and necessary for upholding transparent and accountable planning practices. Appeal mechanisms give applicants the ability to have a decision reconsidered at a last resort if an agreeable solution cannot be found. The current Planning Act and the City of Winnipeg Charter already provide a number of opportunities for public participation that remain unchanged under Bill 37. The City of Winnipeg asks that residents in the City of Winnipeg impacted by a decision be provided the same right of appeal to the municipal board given to residents living in other municipalities. The government listened and amended Bill 37 to give the public right to appeal zoning bylaws in the City of Winnipeg, making it consistent across Manitoba. Stakeholders also raised the question of the capacity of the municipal board, and our government has committed to ensure it has the tools, processes, and resources to deliver its responsibilities in a timely manner. Timelines on planning approval processes and the Manitoba Municipal Board increase consistency and will reduce red tape and unnecessary delays. Stakeholders ask that the timeline for appeals be shortened to ensure the process is streamlined, and the government is listening by shortening that appeal period. The Manitoba government is committed to continue to directly engage with stakeholders as we look forward to developing regulations and guidelines to support the bill. For example, stakeholders are directly participating in discussions about future regulations that will guide the use of development agreements and also determine the structure and governance of the Capital Region Planning Board. Questions have also been asked about how secondary plans can be used effectively without unduly delaying development. This government is listening to those concerns and is committed to do further work in this area with our partners. In January of this year, I established a multi-stakeholder working group with representation from the Association of Manitoba Municipalities, City of Winnipeg, Urban Development Institute, the Manitoba Professional Planning Institute, Winnipeg Metropolitan Region, and other planning experts. The Bill 37 Working Group has been meeting regularly to provide feedback in advance to government on the implementation of Bill 37, including associated policies, regulations, and training materials, and potential future amendments. Bill 37 also commits the province to conduct a review of legislation within 3 years after it coming into force. In conclusion, this bill will ensure that local governments make timely and transparent decisions on private sector capital investment opportunities in their communities. Now more than ever, it is crucial to support response and recovery efforts from the challenges created by the pandemic. Manitoba needs to catch up to other Canadian jurisdictions that have a mechanism in place, such as coordinated approaches to planning in the capital region, mandated timelines for planning decisions, and independent appeal systems to help reduce delays to development. I look forward to consideration of this important legislation by the committee and welcome and thank everyone for participating this evening. Thank you.
We thank the minister. Does the critic from the official opposition have an opening statement? Mr. Weeb.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thank you for all the presenters who came out this evening. You know, this has got to be, in my time here in the legislature, probably, you know, the bill that is the most half-baked, that even, you know, across the board, every presenter could identify problems with. And, you know, I mean, often we have, you know, one side of an argument or the other side of an argument presented in a committee. In this case, we even had members of the minister's own Bill 37 working group saying that the bill is on the wrong track. And it's incredible to me that even, you know, the most ardent proponents would say, yes, but, and identify a number of problems. I also just mentioned that every single elected official or representative of elected officials spoke against this bill and spoke to identify the many problems with it. This speaks to the fact that this government, once again, is bringing bill after bill that shows that they cannot work with others. They can't work with municipalities. in this case, can't even work with developers and other industry folks. They have brought forward a bill that is so half-baked. And, you know, I give the minister some credit. I know it was dumped on him by the minister, Minister Squires, in sort of the form that he's bringing it forward here. Even after, as an official opposition, we delayed this bill and we gave the government a second chance. They were trying to bring this through and push it through during COVID, and we gave them an out. They had an opportunity to come back, consult, talk with our municipal leaders, and they still managed to get it wrong. You know, we know that municipalities are struggling right now during this pandemic just to keep their heads above water. So we question the timing for this government to continue to push this bill to overhaul that city planning and create more uncertainty for both industry and for those municipalities. Bill 37 allows the provincial government through the municipal board to overrule local decision making. They will have the final say on key land use planning processes such as zoning, zoning amendments, secondary plan amendments, conditional approvals, subdivisions, and development agreements. And we heard time and time again from elected officials and from industry alike saying that this is a potential bottleneck, that this is creating more red tape and potential for a backlog that the minister has no ability to deal with. We also heard from the Mayor of Winnipeg and others about concerns about the composition of the board, about how everything, it seems like, is being left in regulations. And for some reason, this minister doesn't want to just be open with Manitobans and tell them exactly what he's planning to do with those regulations. In every other jurisdiction that has similar legislation, it's laid out in the legislation, and it allows everybody to have a say, and those appeals to be front and center. Bill 37 will subordinate local democracy. Local decisions can be overturned, and rights of appeal are given to developers but not to citizens. So this bill will mean that local municipalities will have a harder time doing things like protecting historical areas or fragile ecosystems or the encroachment of developers, for example. These changes will mean that local voices won't matter and that locals won't be able to decide what to do with their own land. We also heard from the city of Selkirk, who is concerned that they are being included in the first place. And this is coming from elected officials in the city of Selkirk. Of course, I also spent time traveling virtually, I guess, across the province, talking to municipalities, and many were concerned about the overreach of the previous Bill 48. And while there was a change made there and that consultation is now necessary, the city of Selkirk gets roped into this without any ability to have their say. Provinces is trying to take control away from municipalities and make it harder for them to refuse developers' proposals, and it's an unprecedented power grab that prioritizes the wants of developers, the priorities of this government over the needs and desires of communities. Manitobans want to keep the fair planning processes and local decision-making they've been accustomed to for years. This bill sets unrealistic timelines for approval of planning and also appeals. As the AMM pointed out, appeal first and clog up the system. That's the direction we're moving in. All that to say, Mr. Chair, as I said throughout the evening, we have members who represent some of these communities sitting on this committee tonight, and they had an opportunity to go to Minister Squires and say this bill was wrong, and they didn't. And now they have an opportunity to sit here and say the same to the current minister. He seems willing to just try and jam this through during a pandemic. He's going to keep moving forward, but maybe they can speak up on behalf of their electorate. We've been asked tonight to cancel the bill. We've been asked tonight to pause the bill. We've been asked tonight to delay proclamation. At this point, we'll take anything we can get, Mr. Chair. This is a bad bill. It's half-baked, and the minister should go back to the drawing board, actually consult with these folks that have come here tonight, and try to bring a bill that actually moves the Metro Planning Region forward. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
We thank the member. It is the hour is getting late. It's about 12 minutes to midnight at the moment. So I just want to remind members that the rules for this committee suggest that we have to adjourn at midnight unless there is unanimous consent to continue further. What's the will of the committee? Mr. Weeb.
Well, just maybe we can get that out of the way now. I think informally we've all sort of talked that we want to make sure that we deal with the bills here tonight. Maybe I can ask for leave that we continue to sit as a committee until the work of the committee is done here tonight.
The proposal is that we continue to sit as a committee until the work of the committee is done here tonight. What do the members have to say? Agreed and so ordered. All right. Once again, during the consideration of a bill, the enacting clause and title are postponed until all other clauses have been considered in their proper order, and also with agreement from the committee, the chair, that's me, will call blocks of clauses that conform to pages, with the understanding that we'll stop at any particular clause or clauses where members may have comments, questions, or amendments to proposed. Agreed? All right. Shall clauses 1 and 2 pass? Clauses 1 and 2 are accordingly passed. Shall clause 3 pass? Clause 3 is accordingly passed. Shall clause 4 pass? Clause 4 is accordingly passed. Shall clauses 5 through 7 pass? Clauses 5 through 7 are accordingly passed. Shall clauses 8 through 12 pass? Clauses 8 through 12 are accordingly passed. Shall clauses 13 through 17 pass? Clauses 13 through 17 are accordingly passed. Shall clauses 18 and 19 pass? Clauses 18 and 19 are accordingly passed. Shall clauses 20 through 22 pass? Shall clause 20, I hear a no, so shall clause 20 pass? Clause 20 is accordingly passed. Shall clause 21 pass? Clause 21 is accordingly passed. Shall clause 22 pass? I hear a no. The Honourable Minister.
Yeah, we would like to introduce a motion to reduce the time to file an appeal from 30 days to 14 days. This change would reduce delays issuing development permits and further streamline approval. You have to read the motion. Motion first before I go through my comments on the motion. So I move, do I need a seconder? So I move that clause 22 of the bill be amended. A, in part of the proposed clause 82.13A before subclause I by striking out 60 days and substituting 14 days, and B, in the proposed clause 82.13B by striking out 90 days and substituting 14 days.
The amendment is in order. It has been moved by Minister Johnson that that clause 22 of the bill be amended, A, in the part of the proposed clause 82.13A before subclause I by striking out 60 days and substituting 14 days, and B, in the proposed clause 82.13B by striking out 90 days and substituting 40 days. 14 days. The amendment is in order. The floor is open for questions. Mr. Weeb.
Yeah, maybe I'll defer to the Minister to explain what he's doing here.
Very well. Minister Johnson, go ahead.
Thanks. I'll start over because it's very brief in the essence of time. So we are introducing motions to reduce the time to file an appeal from 30 days to 14 days. This change would reduce delays in issuing development permits and further streamline the approval process without negative impacts. It is also expected that all parties will have made all efforts to resolve differences before this time begins, and therefore a shorter timeline will not result in any missed opportunities to appeal. Thank you.
We thank the Minister. Mr. Weeb.
Maybe the Minister can just outline what provisions are that he's talking about that would force the parties to come together to resolve before they come to the appeal process.
The Honourable Minister.
Yeah, well, they have delegations and all sorts of different mechanisms for a developer to present to council prior to going to an appeal process.
Mr. Weeb.
So again, if the minister can just lay out exactly what steps a developer would have to take before they got to the appeal process.
Mr. Johnson.
That is a long, drawn-out step, as you heard here from the presenters tonight, that some of them have been years in the process of going through this before the appeal process.
Mr. Weed.
So you're saying they would still need to go through those years of appeals or years of process before they got to the appeal process. What does it matter changing it from 30 to 14 days then?
Minister Johnson.
And this was a requirement that the AMM brought forward because they want closure at the end of their decision to know if it will be appealed. They would want to know sooner than later. So this is an amendment that was suggested by AMM and
Mr. Johnson.
no, that's not accurate. Through the whole planning process, the public has the right to present for all the decision-making opportunities that the municipality puts forward through planning, and those opportunities are there, but they're also there at the municipal board.
Mr. Weed.
And at the municipal board then, for individuals who, or I guess developers who want to bring forward, what are the steps exactly that they would have to go through? I'm just concerned about this where you're saying it's, you know, well, they have all these, there's provisions in the bill that would bring these parties together to work something out. Exactly how would that process work?
Minister Johnson.
This is if all other provisions fail, they have to apply within 14 days to appeal the decision. So the hearing isn't in 14 days. The application to appeal would be within 14 days. And as I said, the municipalities, AMM, have proposed this so they can get closure on their decision.
Mr. Weed.
Okay, I think I understand this. What I guess I'm trying to get at is exactly at the municipal board, what is the process to avoid it from being appealed? So you had talked about provisions that the parties have to go through to ensure that it doesn't get appealed. We've heard concerns all night from municipalities who are saying that there's going to be a rush to appeal because it's not set out in the legislation exactly what is necessary to trigger an appeal. So if the decision goes the wrong way, what's to stop anybody from appealing immediately? And then 14 days, 30 days, 90 days, doesn't matter. It's still got to go through that process and potentially overwhelm that appeal process.
Minister Johnson.
As mentioned, we've increased the budget for the municipal board 42% this year in budget 21-22, so they'll have the resources to listen to the appeals.
Mr. Weeb.
Well, I also heard the minister say tonight that he has a backlog that he's still working on after 5 years of being an elected official. So, I mean, it just, I guess we can all just hope and pray that they're going to figure this out and maybe throw a couple extra bucks at it. It might clear out or be able to handle the increased workload. But it still doesn't address the issue that AMM and every other elected official brought here tonight, that this is an appeal first and appeal first process, which is not helpful to anybody. So I appreciate that we're taking baby steps. Maybe the minister has some secret amendments that he's going to pull out of his back pocket at the last second here that will make it a little better. I see him flashing some papers over there. So hopefully it'll address some of these other concerns. But I'm just, this doesn't seem to get at the heart of the issue that we've heard from presenters here tonight. Thanks very much, Mr. Chair.
All right. Is the committee ready for the question on this amendment? I'm about to read the question for the committee, but I'll advise you that you are allowed to dispense this particular reading. Dispense. Shall the amendment pass? Pass. The amendment is accordingly passed. Shall clause 23 or 22 pass as amended? Is that the thing to say? Pass. Clause 22 is passed as amended. Shall clause 23 pass? Clause 23 is accordingly passed. Shall clauses 24 through 26 pass? No. I hear a no. Shall clause 24 pass? No. The Honourable Minister.
We would like this removed.
Okay. All those in favor, oh, so I don't have to say that. I could just say clause 24 is accordingly defeated.
Yep.
And that's it? And then shall 25 pass?
No.
Clause 25 is accordingly defeated. Shall clause 26 pass?
No.
Clause 26 is accordingly defeated. Shall clauses 27 through 29 pass?
No.
I hear a no. Shall clause 27 pass?
No.
Clause 27 is accordingly defeated. Shall clause 28 pass?
No.
Clause 28 is accordingly defeated. Shall clause 29 pass? No. Clause 29 is accordingly defeated. Shall clauses 30 through 34 pass?
Yes.
Clauses 30 through 34 accordingly pass. Shall clauses 35 through 37 pass?
Yes.
Clauses 35 through 37 are accordingly passed. Shall clause 38 pass?
No.
Clause 38, now I have to give the Honourable Minister.
I move that clause 38 of this bill be amended. A, in the proposed clause 149(1) to A by striking out major occupancy and substituting major development, and B, in the proposed subsection 141, I'll start that over again. In the proposed subsection 149(1)(3) by striking out an occupancy to be a major occupancy and substituting development to be a major development.
It has been moved by Minister Johnson that clause 38 of the bill be amended. A, in the proposed clause 149.1 bracket 2 bracket A by striking out major occupancy and substituting major development, and B, in the proposed subsection 149.1 bracket 3 by striking out an occupancy to be a major occupancy and substituting a development to be a major development. The amendment is in order. The floor is open for questions. Minister Johnson.
This introduction with the new terminology in the bill related to the use of development agreements at the permit stage, changing the regulation, making authority from major occupancy to major development will allow greater flexibility to place limits and define this new power to ensure that it is used appropriately by municipalities.
Mr. Weed.
Maybe the minister could just clarify exactly what's meant by occupancy in the unamended legislation. Occupancy would have been used in the original legislation because it sounds like development was the original intent.
Minister Johnson.
Yes, occupancy is a term generally used for building code. And in this case, major development is more clear in the development process, in the planning process.
Mr. Weeb.
We'll leave it at that, Mr.
Oh, I
Chair.
appreciate
Thank you very
that
much. Thank you.
so much. Any other members wish to comment? Good. So the amendment is still fresh in our minds. Shall the amendment pass? Passed. The amendment is accordingly passed. Shall clause 38 pass as amended?
Pass.
Clause 38 as amended is accordingly passed. Shall clause 39 pass? The Honourable Minister.
I move that clause 39 of the bill be amended in the proposed subsection 151.033 by striking out 30 days wherever it occurs and substituting it with 14 days.
The Honourable Minister.
Apparently I misread that, so I will reread it. So I move that clause 39 of the bill be amended in the proposed subsection 151.033 by striking out 30 days wherever it occurs and substituting 14 days.
It has been moved by Honorable Minister Johnson that Clause 39 of the bill be amended in the proposed Section 151. Sorry. That Clause 39 of the bill be amended in the proposed subsection 151.0.3 bracket 3 by striking out 30 days wherever it occurs and substituting 14 days. The amendment is in order. The floor is open for questions. The Honourable Minister.
I think we've discussed this. It's a proposal brought forward by AMM and we support it.
Mr. Weeb.
Well, maybe I'll just put a quick word on the record because I don't know how many more amendments the minister is bringing. I think this speaks to, as I said earlier, just how half-baked this legislation is, that here we are trying to amend it. My concern remains that we are making very small changes to a very flawed legislation and making changes that the minister may not even be entirely clear on exactly what he's doing. So, but here we are, and I'll allow the vote to happen here on this amendment.
Is the committee ready for the question? Shall the amendment pass? Shall Clause 39, sorry, the amendment is accordingly passed. Shall Clause 39 as amended pass? Clause 39 as amended is accordingly passed. Shall Clauses 40 through 42 pass? Clauses 40 through 42 are accordingly passed. Shall Clauses 43 and 44 pass? Clauses 43 and 44 are accordingly passed. Shall Clauses 45 through 48 pass? Clauses 45 through 48 are accordingly passed. Shall Clauses 49 through 52 pass? Clauses 49 through 52 are accordingly passed. Shall Clause 53 pass? Clause 53 is accordingly passed. Shall Clauses 54 through 57 pass? Clauses 54 through 57 are accordingly passed. Shall Clauses 58 through 60 pass? Clauses 58 through 60 are accordingly passed. Shall Clauses 61 and 62 pass? I hear a no. Shall Clause 61 pass? Clause 61 is accordingly defeated. Shall Clause 62 pass? Clause 62 is accordingly passed. Shall Clause 63 pass? Clause 63 is accordingly passed. Shall Clause 64 pass? Clause 64 is accordingly passed. Shall Clauses 65 through 67 pass? I hear a no. Shall Clause 65 pass? Again, I hear a no. The Honourable Minister.
I move that Clause 65 of the bill be amended. A, in the proposed clause 240.1.1.1A by striking out major occupancy and substituting major development, and B, in the proposed subsection 240.1.1.3 by striking out an occupancy to be a major occupancy and substituting a development to be a major development.
It has been moved by the Honourable Minister Johnson that Clause 65 of the bill be amended. A, in the proposed Clause 240.1.1 bracket 1 bracket A by striking out major occupancy and substituting major development, and B, in the proposed section 240.1. B, in the proposed subsection 240.1.1 bracket 3 by striking out an occupancy to be a major occupancy and substituting a development to be a major development. The amendment is in order. The floor is open for questions. The Honourable Minister.
I think we've discussed this already, so it's just another part of the bill. So we'll move forward with the vote if the critic is okay with it.
Is the committee ready for the question? The question before the committee is fresh in our minds. So shall the amendment pass? The amendment is accordingly passed. Shall Clause 65 pass as amended? Clause 65 is passed as amended. Shall Clause 66 pass? Clause 66 is accordingly passed. Shall Clause 67 pass? Clause 67 is accordingly passed. Shall Clauses 68 and 69 pass? Clauses 68 and 69 are accordingly passed. Shall Clauses 70 through 72 pass? Clauses 70 through 72 are accordingly passed. Shall clauses 73 and 74 pass? Clauses 73 and 74 are accordingly passed. Shall clauses 75 through 77 pass? I hear a no. Shall clause 75 pass? Clause 75 is accordingly passed. Shall clause 76 pass? Clause 76 is accordingly passed. Shall clause 77 pass? I hear a no. The Honourable Minister.
I move that clause 77 of the bill be amended. A, in the proposed clause 282.1.1a by adding or at the end of the subclause I and striking out subclause, is that 3 or I? So, okay, by striking out subclause I in the proposed subsection 282.1. Oh, B. Let me just start this over again now that I got the gist of the I of it. I move that clause 77 of the bill be amended. A, in the proposed clause 282.1.1a by adding or at the end of subclause I and striking out subclause III. In the proposed subsection B, in this proposed subsection 282.1.3 by striking out 30 days and submitting 14 days, substituting 14 days. C, B, in the proposed subsection 282.1.3 by striking out 30 days and substituting 14 days. C, in the proposed subsection 282.1.10 by striking out a decision and substituting subject to section 495 a decision. D, in the proposed subsection 282.2.1 by striking out clause C, and E, in the proposed subsection 282.2.3 by striking out 30 days and submitting 14 days. Substituting. E, in the proposed subsection 282.2.3 by striking out 30 days and substituting 14 days.
It has been moved by the Honourable Minister Johnson that clause 77 of the bill be amended. A, in the proposed clause 282.1(1)(a) by adding or at the end of subclause I and striking out subclause III. B, in the proposed subsection 282.1(3) by striking out 30 days and substituting 14 days. C, in the proposed section 282.1(10) C, in the proposed subsection 282.1(10) by striking out a decision and substituting subject to section 495 a decision. D, in the proposed subsection 282.1.2(1), D, in the proposed subsection 282.2(1) by striking out clause C, and E, in the proposed section 282, E, in the proposed subsection 282.2(3) by striking out 30 days and substituting 14 days. The amendment is in order. The floor is open for questions. I thank you in advance for your patience. The Honourable Minister.
I think it's self-explanatory. Thank you.
Mr. Wiebe.
Well, you know, I did get excited, Mr. Chair, because I think the block of sections we were considering, you know, might have actually led us to make some real changes with regards to the appeals. And here we are tinkering around the edges once again. You know, I know the AMM has been pretty clear that they're asking for, you know, some specific grounds for appeals, having tighter timelines. I think this is what the minister is getting at now. But clear parameters are what's missing. And, you know, so I guess taking on one piece of the concerns while ignoring, you know, the reams of presenters that we had here tonight, it probably doesn't go far enough. So I, you know, hope that the minister is able to take those concerns and go back to the drawing board one more time, because it sounds like he's willing to make changes here tonight because he recognizes just how bad this bill is. Maybe now that he's heard all these presenters, I think maybe he's going to start from scratch and really try and make a go at representing some of the concerns he heard here tonight.
Is the committee ready for the question? Shall the amendment pass? Shall clause 70, the amendment is accordingly passed. Shall clause 77 pass as amended? Clause 77 is accordingly passed as amended. Shall clauses 78 and 79 pass? Clauses 78 and 79 are accordingly passed. Shall clauses 80 through 82 pass? Clauses 80 through 82 are accordingly passed. Shall clauses 83 through 86 pass? Clauses 83 through 86 are accordingly passed. Shall clauses 87 and 88 pass? Clauses 87 and 88 are accordingly passed. Shall clauses 89 through 91 pass? Clauses 89 through 91 are accordingly passed. Shall the enacting clause pass? The enacting clause is accordingly passed. Shall the title pass? The title is accordingly passed. Shall the bill as amended be reported? Agreed, the bill shall be reported as amended. That concludes consideration of Bill 37. We will now move on to Bill 38. Does the minister responsible for Bill 38 have an opening statement? Minister Johnson.
Apparently so. First of all, I would like to thank everyone for coming out to present this bill tonight. It is an important bill that will establish a new Permit Dispute Resolution Act and amend the Buildings and Mobile Homes Act and the Manitoba Hydro Act in order to create a process to hear appeals of permitting decisions and orders related to building and electrical codes, as well as for the establishment of service standards for permitting authorities in Manitoba. The bill implements some key permitting recommendations made by the Treasury Board Secretariat and their Planning, Zoning, and Permitting in Manitoba review published June 11th, 2019, by establishing avenues for technical appeals and service standards. The recommendations were the result of extensive consultations conducted by Treasury Board Secretariat staff with a broad cross-section of affected stakeholders. Departmental staff conducted consultations in developing the proposed legislative changes and will consult further on the development of accompanying regulations. The proposed changes will bring Manitoba in line with other Canadian jurisdictions which already offer technical appeal mechanisms on code issues. This means that permit applicants and building owners aggrieved by code compliance decisions of building and electrical permitting authorities will have the ability to appeal a technical adjudicator who will be appointed based on their extensive code experience. Technical adjudicators' decisions will be made publicly available to serve as guidance to code users and enforcement bodies following best practices from other Canadian jurisdictions. These proposed changes will ensure greater consistency, transparency, and accountability of appeals across the province. The department will consult with stakeholders on regulation that will establish the hearing process and clarify how the adjudicator will assign costs for the dispute resolution hearing. The bill will also allow for the adoption of service standards that will require building and electrical permitting authorities to process permit applications and conduct inspections within timeframes established by regulation. We agree with stakeholders that it is essential that any new processes do not delay growth projects in local communities. I look forward to further consulting with municipalities and other stakeholders on proposed timelines and other regulatory changes associated with this legislation. Additionally, this bill will require that Manitoba adopt further versions of the national model construction codes within fixed time frames to improve harmonization with other jurisdictions and ensure Manitoba meets commitments under the Canada Free Trade Agreement. The bill will also ensure that there is only one electrical code for Manitoba, ensuring consistent code application between the City of Winnipeg and the rest of the province. Other changes to the Buildings and Mobile Homes Act will streamline administrative processes and allow for the modernization of mobile home requirements. I would like to emphasize that these legislative changes will be brought into force by proclamation with accompanying regulation changes that further consultation will be conducted on regulatory changes to complete the framework. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
We thank the minister. Does the official opposition critic have an opening statement? Mr. Weeb.
I do. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Manitobans believe that public services need to be fairly and efficiently delivered. They also believe local authorities should be empowered in order to support that efficient service delivery. Unfortunately, Bill 38 uses a heavy-handed approach. Rather than improving local decision-making, it once again overrides it. The legislation establishes appeal of local permitting through the establishment of an appeal commission. However, it is nearly impossible for a commissioner to be removed except for cause. This is an unprecedented power given to a commissioner compared to any other agency in Manitoba. And the decisions of the commission are not subject to any further appeal, according to Section 12 of the Act. We have serious questions about whether this would even withstand scrutiny by the courts. Other jurisdictions take a more collaborative approach. For example, a local municipality might be encouraged to establish a citizens committee that provides an appeal of permitting disputes. Bill 38 does not do that. Instead, it relies on an adversarial review process that will cause more problems than it solves. Additionally, this bill implements a single adjudicator to oversee the code, meaning there is a much higher chance of them making mistakes. This whole matter, Mr. Chair, has been politicized right from the start. This Pallister government brought forward an industry review that Mayor Bowman called, quote, a political review. Rather than an arm's length and extensive review, the review of planning, zoning, and permitting in Manitoba was quickly conducted inside Treasury Board and not subject to an open or transparent process and not given the opportunity to be reviewed. Manitobans deserve to have a government that promotes efficient and effective service delivery, but local governments need to be better engaged in resolving these disputes. Unfortunately, once again, this didn't happen before the legislation was introduced. Mayor Bowman says he wasn't consulted on the land use planning legislation that we heard about and is before the legislature. Advocates in the disability community are also concerned that their issues are not being heard in the development of this legislation. So we encourage the minister to consult with them. The changes outlined in this bill would require, according to the City of Winnipeg CAO, massive implementation efforts, including process and IT redesign and amendments to city bylaws. Given the province's track record, it's highly unlikely that any additional funding would be provided to the city to pay for these regulatory changes. We also heard from industry this evening as one of the presenters who simply asked for the implementation period to be extended so that industry had a chance to catch up. The suggestion I heard was 12 months. So if the minister was open to that, I think that would be appropriate. Give the industry some time to make sure that they are on board and that they are able to implement this, especially during a time of COVID and a time when they are so very busy, just as a standard rule. I'd like to thank the presenter and thank them for providing their valuable input on this bill. I hope that the minister will then listen to those Manitobans, start working collaboratively for a change with municipal governments and with others rather than legislating more and more powers over them. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
We thank the member. During the consideration of this bill also, the enacting clauses and title are postponed until other clauses have been considered in their proper order. Due to the size and structure of this bill, I'd like to propose the following order of consideration for the for the committee's consideration. For your reference, we'll be providing copies of this outline for committee members, or not, with the understanding that we can stop at any point if you have any questions or you want to propose amendments. I propose that we call the bill in the following order. Schedule A, which is pages 3 through 12, called in blocks conforming to pages. Schedule B, which is pages 13 through 27, called in blocks conforming to pages. Schedule C, which is pages 28 through 33, called in blocks conforming to pages. And then the enacting clauses, pages 1 and 2, and the bill title. Is that agreed as an appropriate order of consideration for Bill 38? Agreed and so ordered. So we will first consider Schedule A, pages 3 through 12. Shall Clause 1 pass? Clause 1 is accordingly passed. Shall Clauses 2 and 3 pass? Clauses 2 and 3 are accordingly passed. Shall Clauses 4 through 6 pass? Clauses 4 through 6 are accordingly passed. Shall Clauses 7 through 9 pass? Clauses 7 through 9 are accordingly passed. Shall Clause 10 pass? Clause 10 is accordingly passed. Shall Clauses 11 through 13 pass? Clauses 11 through 13 are accordingly passed. Shall Clauses 14 through 16 pass? Clauses 14 through 16 are accordingly passed. Shall Clause 17 pass? Clause 17 is accordingly passed. Shall Clauses 18 and 19 pass? Clauses 18 and 19 are accordingly passed. Now we'll consider Schedule B, pages 13 through 27. Shall Clauses 1 through 4 of Schedule B pass? Clauses 1 through 4 are accordingly passed. Shall Clause 5 pass? Clause 5 is accordingly passed. Shall Clauses 6 and 7 pass? Clauses 6 and 7 are accordingly passed. Shall Clauses 8 and 9 pass? Clauses 8 and 9 are accordingly passed. Shall Clause 10 pass? Clause 10 is accordingly passed. Shall Clause 11 pass? Clause 11 is accordingly passed. Shall Clauses 12 and 13 pass? Clauses 12 and 13 are accordingly passed. Shall Clauses 14 through 16 pass? Clauses 14 through 16 are accordingly passed. Shall Clauses 17 through 19 pass? Clauses 17 through 19 are accordingly passed. Shall Clauses 20 and 21 pass? Clauses 20 and 21 are accordingly passed. Shall Clauses 22 and 23 pass? Clauses 22 and 23 are accordingly passed. Shall Clauses 24 through 26 pass? Clauses 24 through 26 are accordingly passed. Shall Clauses 27 through 29 pass? Clauses 27 through 29 are accordingly passed. So now we'll consider Schedule C, pages 28 through 33. Shall Clauses 1 through 4 of Schedule C pass? Clauses 1 through 4 are accordingly passed. Shall Clause 5 pass? Clause 5 is accordingly passed. Shall Clause 6 pass? Clause 6 is accordingly passed. Shall Clauses 7 and 8 pass? Clauses 7 and 8 are accordingly passed. Now we'll consider the enacting clauses on pages 1 and 2. Shall Clauses 1 through 3 pass? Clauses 1 through 3 are accordingly passed. Shall Clause 4 pass? Clause 4 is accordingly passed. Shall the title pass? The title is accordingly passed. Shall the bill be reported? Agreed. The bill shall be reported. This concludes clause by clause consideration of Bill 38, leaving us with Bill 53. Does the minister responsible for Bill 53 have an opening statement? Minister Johnson.
Yes, I would like to make a couple of opening remarks. I want to thank everyone that came out to present to this bill tonight and thank those who submitted letters in support. This bill will modernize municipal operations, provide municipalities with increased flexibility and fair say, and enhance the fairness of the Code of Conduct framework. The COVID-19 pandemic has fundamentally changed the way that governments operate. Virtual meetings and flexible options for posting public notices have provided municipalities with the flexibility to engage residents in a new way. Temporary submission orders over the websites as an alternative to print version. The bill will also grant flexibility in situations where local newspaper is not available either in print or online by allowing notices to be posted in 2 conspicuous locations within the municipality. These changes will empower municipalities to make decisions based on their local context and the needs of their residents. We continue to recognize the importance of local newspapers in communities across Manitoba, particularly for ensuring open, transparent, and accountable governance. That is why this bill maintains the requirements for municipalities and planning districts to publish notices in local newspapers. either in print or online. This addresses feedback from the Manitoba Community Newspaper Association that the province received in 28 from the former Bill 19. That was the Planning Amendment Act that requested requirements to publish notices in local newspapers remain in place. These changes will ensure that public notices remain accessible and local newspapers continue to be a trusted source of information while modernizing the publishing of notices. We are committed to the vitality of the local media and while enhancing access to government for all Manitobans. This bill also proposes to allow a simple majority of council members to approve sanctions on councils of 5 or 6 members. Councils with 7 or more members will still be required to meet the majority plus 1 requirement to underscore the seriousness of affirming code of conduct resolutions. These changes proposed by this bill will allow the interested parties to recuse themselves on all councils, no matter the size and no matter who is party to the complaint. These changes will allow all votes to sanction council members on small councils of 5 or 6 members. This will enhance the procedural fairness of the Code of Conduct resolution process and strengthen the transparency and accountability of all municipal councils. This bill will apply to 53 small municipal councils in Manitoba. There will be no changes applied to other councils of 7 or more. I would like to thank our stakeholders, such as the Manitoba Status of Women Secretariat and the Association of Manitoba Municipalities, for their important ongoing contributions to the Code of Conduct framework. We are proud to introduce this legislation, which responds directly to feedback from our stakeholders and builds on lessons learned during this pandemic. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
We thank the minister. Does the critic from the official opposition have an opening statement? Mr. Wiebe.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I am happy to put a few words on the record with regards to Bill 53, Municipal Statutes Amendment Act 2. This bill amends the Act to clarify that meetings and hearings may be held virtually, either in part or in whole. Obviously, this is a necessary step, as we proved here this evening by having virtual participation. I guess all of us could have been virtual if the need was there, so giving some flexibility to municipalities is a welcome change. However, this bill also removes the mandatory requirement to publish public notices in Manitoba community newspapers. Though it could still be on the website, this does not support those who prefer the printed version, seniors and elders in Manitoba who rely on those print versions, and communities who rely on those ways of communicating as well. The language of the Act currently states that the public notices are required for a public hearing at least twice in a newspaper or other publication that has general circulation within the municipality. Now this bill will allow for either newspaper publication or post a notice on the website of the newspaper. This will be inaccessible to seniors and other folks in the community who do not have access to the internet. And as the minister noted, this was attempted in a different form before under with Bill 19, and certainly we heard from the Community Newspaper Association on that. Manitobans deserve to know about important changes that will affect their family. They must be aware of any public notice that affects the health, safety, or their community. Government has a responsibility to make public information accessible for all Manitobans. Instead, the Pallister government is attempting to bury government notices on obscure websites and make it harder for Manitobans to get the information they need. We're concerned that Bill 53 will bury government notices rather than increase, quote, openness and ease of access, end quote, as they claim it will. This government is choosing to end the centuries-old requirement to advertise when they are about to do something that affects citizens' rights, property, and lives. This bill will affect the manner in which every Manitoban how everyday Manitobans learn about things such as changes to school board boundaries, environmental protection laws. Readers will see the notices that are delivered to their houses are published in their local newspaper in a timely manner, and we want that to continue. I'd like to thank the presenters this evening on Bill 53, and hopefully the minister will clarify as we go through the process here some of the changes that are being made here.
We thank the member. During the consideration of this bill also, the enacting clause and title clause will be postponed until all other clauses have been considered in their proper order. And with agreement from the committee, I'll call clauses in blocks that conform to pages, with the understanding that we'll stop at any particular clause or clauses where members may have comments, questions, or amendments to propose. Is that agreed? Agreed and so ordered. Shall clauses 1 and 2 pass? Clauses 1 and 2 are accordingly passed. Shall clauses 3 through 6 pass? Clauses 3 through 6 are accordingly passed. Shall clause 7 pass? No. I hear a no. Mr. Wiebe.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And I'd simply like to pause at this moment to get some clarification from the minister. We had an opportunity at second reading of the bill. There was a question period in the chamber where I was able to ask the minister very directly if this was going to be an and or an or situation when it comes to publishing information and notices. I was assured by the minister at that time that this was an and situation. In other words, that this just allowed for notices to go on the website in addition to the print if available, and to give some flexibility to allow for those places where there just isn't a print version that would be widely distributed. The minister at that time assured me that that was the intent of the bill, and this met very clearly in the same vein as the bill briefing that we had in his office, where I also brought this issue forward, and he assured myself and other members that were present that this was in fact the case, that the plan was to have this in addition to, not in substitution of. So under section 421, subsection B, subject to subsection 1.1, do one of the following, and that is either publish the notice at least twice in the newspaper or post the notice prominently on the website of a newspaper. Again, I think every member here recognizes the importance of local community newspapers, not just for for the economic growth of rural Manitoba, but just to get the information out. As I said in my preamble, there's a whole lot of people who still rely very much on the print versions of those community newspapers, and we want to make sure that they don't miss those publications. So I'm just looking for some clarification, and potentially this could be an amendment that we bring forward and just clear this up, because I think the minister, as I said, was in the bill briefing and in the House, seemed very clear that this was going to be an addition to rather than a substitute of. And I can keep going, but because I see there's some frantic work being done, but I do hope that this is a consideration that we can just come to an agreement on and we can move forward on. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
The Honourable Minister.
Yeah, he might be referring to subject to section 1.1, do one of the following, but section 1.1 states if there's no local newspaper. So I believe it still stands as stated.
Mr. Wiebe.
Okay, well, that doesn't seem to make too much sense to me because it says specifically here, publish the notice at least twice in a newspaper. Again, I'm going to, as I said during second reading and during the bill briefing, I'll take the minister at his word, and maybe we can meet, a little bit offline to make sure we're all on the same page, because I know there's a number of members who are concerned about this as well. And if it's simply that I'm reading the bill wrong or that there needs to be a small change, then as I said, hopefully we can just move through that quickly.
All right. Shall clause 7 pass? Clause 7 is accordingly passed. Shall clauses 8 through 11 pass? Clauses 8 through 11 are accordingly passed. Shall clause 12 pass? Clause 12 is accordingly passed. Shall clause 13 through 16 pass? Clauses 13 through 16 are accordingly passed. Shall clauses 17 and 18 pass? Clauses 17 and 18 are accordingly passed. Shall clauses 19 and 20 pass? Clauses 19 and 20 are accordingly passed. Shall clauses 21 through 24 pass? Clauses 21 through 24 are accordingly passed. Shall clause 25 pass? Clause 25 is accordingly passed. Shall clause 26 pass? Clause 26 is accordingly passed. Shall the enacting clause pass? The enacting clause is accordingly passed. Shall the title pass? The title is accordingly passed. Shall the bill be reported? Agreed. The bill shall be reported. This concludes the matters that we have before. Sorry? This concludes the matters that we have before us, the hour being 12:43 a.m. Sorry. Committee rise. So, what is the will of the committee? Committee rise. I'm bad at this. All right.